Hello everybody, Reggie Tam here, and in today's video I'm shortly going to be joined by some of my friends from Discord reviewing some hands I played last night on YouTube. It's very likely to be a pretty long video, so go and get yourself a cup of tea, get a couple of biscuits, settle down and look forward to listening to me getting flamed by lots of regs who think they're good, but are probably a bit shit like the rest of us. If you're watching this or you're starting to watch this around 7 p.m. on Friday, the 24th of September 2021, stop what you're doing, stop the video, go over, watch Waller on Twitch tonight, Waller02 Twitch TV. I'll put a link to his stream beneath the video. Go and watch him first, go and give him a cheer. Very entertaining streamer, very emotional, gets very angry, gets very excited, sometimes gets very pissed. Just an all-round excellent bit of Friday night viewing. So do go ahead and watch him. Stop doing this now. Stop watching. Go and watch Waller. Then come back and watch this over the weekend or whatever. But as I said, if it's not Friday night and it's Saturday or Sunday or booking the 20th of September 2027, like I say, go and get yourself a brew, get a biscuit, pull up a comfy chair and settle in. It should be a good video. So here we go with this first one. It's Unibet. I'm just opening for 2x because I'm too lazy to. I'd rather 2.5x it, but that's 2 scrolls to the mouse wheel, not 1. And I'm too fucking lazy for 2.5x. This guy, 3 bets. What do you think when you see somebody? This is going to be all based on population because it's Unibet and you don't tend to get reads till later in your sessions. When you see people using this 3 bet sides out of position, what's your first instinct on where they are within like the player pool?
I guess like generally sort of expecting them to be a weaker reg or sort of a fun player really. It doesn't seem like a size that they should be using really to, 3x out of position for the big blind. I'm usually going like between 4 and 5.
Yeah, I mean I've been playing a lot on the Euro sites lately. I've been seeing what I perceive to be the better regs by looking at the stats going to like 10x here and stuff like that quite a lot. They're not really, they're ignoring the open size to an extent, especially the smaller ones. Maybe the larger ones are not going 5x. If we like 3.5x, they're not going 5x over that, but over like min opens or 2.5x, 10x, 11x seems to be the standard that most of the what seem like better regs are using. So straight away I thought this guy maybe isn't too good. But I've been doing a ton of overfolding to 3 bets lately. Now, clearly we can't overfold here. I mean, we're getting too good of a price. But would you continue with the call here, or would you be like, well, king, queen off, maybe we'll just pop it into like a, I don't like using the term 4-bet bluffing, but like into a light 4-bet range? What would your preferred thing be here, like right at the start of your session?
I think if it's an unknown, it would just be calling. Probably wouldn't be sort of 4-bet bluffing much at all, especially against someone sort of no history on. Especially in position, I think we can call more to a 3-bet in position than say we're out of position. Probably want to be doing more 4-betting more than calling. 4-bet a little bit more, so to speak, out of position. But in position, I think we can just see a flop here. I think, yeah.
Well, that's what I didn't do. I did that.
Okay.
Because I just don't like playing without the initiative. I think it's personally, I find it quite difficult, even in position, to like play without the initiative, and yeah, I just struggle with that. So I'd rather have the initiative where possible. I do very little calling of 3 bets these days, unless like we're very deep or there's someone else I want to keep in the pot or something like that. So I did that. I don't necessarily think it's that good. I think the sizing's a bit awkward because if it's small. Normally I like my 4 bets to be like over 20 bigs, but because he made it so small, didn't want to go too big.
I mean, I think sort of 4-bet sizes generally, I mean, from what I understand, they're a little bit smaller because you've got like 3x, haven't you? But maybe you could go a touch smaller so you get sort of like a better price on your bluff, and because if you've got aces and kings, you might want to go a bit smaller anyway, because there you're really polarised, aren't you? You really like aces, kings, or a bluff like this, so maybe you can go a little bit smaller, get a better price of your bluff, and sort of.
Yeah, I normally like to go smaller, like 2.25 to 2.5x would be my normal size, but that would have just made that around 14 bigs then, 14 to 15 bigs, and I wouldn't have been comfortable going that small.
True.
So then we get this flop.
It's a bit weird because of the sizings you've taken pre and he's taken with a 3-bet, so it could all be it's all a bit stuff, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, yeah. I'd prefer it if it's 3-bet bigger, so I could just have fucking folded, to be honest. But never mind. So we get this flop. He checks. It's not an especially good flop for our range, but in 4-bet pots, it probably isn't a good flop for his range either. You wouldn't imagine. My guess is his range is going to be predominantly ace highs, broadways, stuff like that. Maybe the occasional suit we connect. We don't know enough about him yet, but I think overall, I'm not really one for attacking these boards in 3-bet pots, but I think in 4-bet pots, especially when we've got king high, we probably need to try and do something to try and win the pot. I don't know what you think about that, though, if you'd just be giving up here.
I mean,
or
when it comes to 4-bet pots, I'm going to be absolutely useless because I very rarely get into these sort of spots really because I'm just generally going to be quite face up on a 4-bet, I think. But yeah, it's like quite awkward, isn't it? Because it's awkward because it doesn't really hit your range, but probably doesn't hit theirs either. They shouldn't really have many pocket pairs that they 3-bet and call a 4-bet with. Shouldn't really have suit connectors. They're probably going to be like, they're going to have over pairs, but you're going to have over pairs, but you'll have the aces and kings. They'll probably have more like queens and jacks, won't they? So it feels like you probably do want to bet. I'll probably just be betting, probably range betting, sort of 25%, 33%, small size really, I think. And go from the try and fold out ace king sort of hand.
so we're kind of what you said, a bit smaller
like it,
maybe.
Yeah, I like it, yeah.
And the turn comes, and he like snap checks again. And I don't think we've got the best hand now, but do we try and win the pot, or do we just like, right, fine, it's a black one. So if he did have any draws, which again I don't think he has too many spade draws, he can obviously have some, but I don't think he's like full of them. It's not like he's gonna have like absolutely like every like spade draw that he would 3-bet with, because obviously some of them fold when we 4-bet, not all of them, but some of them. So do you just give up here? Because do you agree we have to bet to win? We probably don't win at showdown if we just try. Oh, we maybe not even get a showdown if we check back here. He's likely to read the river sometimes.
I agree with you there, yeah, we're struggling for sure. Yeah, we're obviously got to win this pot. Yeah, I mean it's a tough one to keep barreling, especially with no spade, and especially because like he's more likely to have jacks. Basically, he's more likely to have like sets really here, isn't he, than you? But you're not really going to be 4-betting. Probably, maybe you 4-bet jacks, but you're not going to get him off queens. Maybe you get him off ace king by betting. It's just a really tough spot. I'm not really sure the best way, but I can see merits for both really.
Nah, I thought it was a bit spewy. I did go for the bet. I thought it was a little bit spewy, but I was just like, I had it in my head. Well, I've still got all like the bigger over pairs. I don't think he has queens. I don't think he has kings. Don't think he has aces. I agree with you. He could definitely have jacks.
Yeah.
And I think you can just have a lot of like ace king, ace queen, ace 10.
Yeah.
Obviously ace jack that isn't folding. But if we assume he's like a pretty bad reg, is he the type that's, there's going to be a hand later on where it's a 4-bet pot, and I think people don't fold it enough to 4-bets, in my opinion. They kind of get a bit stubborn. So I think you can still have plenty of stuff here that's defended versus a small size that we can make fold. And I think we just have to try and win the pot. I don't just want to just check down here. That's what I've been doing too much of lately, just like 3-betting or 4-betting, stabbing once, giving up, and then seeing people get into showdown with stuff I didn't expect them to have, like some relatively weak hands. So I did go for it here in this one, and pretty sure he's about to fold. But I just wasn't sure. I thought, is that just too spewy? I mean, obviously it worked, but it doesn't mean to say it was a good play just because it worked.
Yeah, can't be tell. I mean, holding the queen's quite nice, because if you think the likely hands that he'll continue with are going to be pocket queens, pocket jacks, sort of hands, aren't they? And you holding a queen's quite nice there, and then the jack being on the board makes it less likely he's got a jack. So I don't think it's terrible. I mean, it's a really weird spot, so I don't think I'm really sure on your line at all, but obviously it works, and you would have done that with aces and kings. That's a pretty strong line, so it can't be terrible, can it, I suppose?
No, it felt a bit weird right off the bat as well. It felt a bit strange, but this is one that I know most people aren't going to like, because I'm guessing close to 100% of the player pool is going to do something that I don't do here. I'm presuming you'd just be 3-betting versus under the gun.
Yeah. I'd be from this position, small blind eye generally. I know you've had this conversation so many times with other people who you speak with, but I'd be 3-bet folding here. I'd never be flying anything from the small blind. But I know we've had that conversation so many times.
I've been having an absolute ton of success lately with traps. Absolutely loads and loads of success. I mean, like, I don't do a lot of study, as you know, but I do sit around doing a lot of fucking just thinking to myself, going over my database, etc., etc. And I mean, of course, just 3-betting this is a completely standard line, and I'm not trying to say this is better. I just try to explain my reasoning behind it. And a lot of it is like, I think if we 3-bet queens here versus under the gun, and this guy's a reg, and I don't know if he's or not, but it was at more than one table, so the chance he is, good chance he is, I would imagine, then they're going to play pretty well against us. We're going to be out of position to someone who's not going to make an absolute ton of mistakes. I don't know this Jerry from anything in the big blind, and I just hate the thought of like 3-bet folding this hand. And then I'll be honest with you, like, out of position in 3-bet pots is not a particular strength of mine. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's a particular strength of many players, except like the really good people against the really good players. And I think this is a spot where lots of players like myself, who are like very enthusiastic, try the best, but just for whatever reason don't study very much, either because they haven't got time or they're just a bit like me, they're turned off by modern study methods. They just get themselves in like all kinds of like really big pickles with this. And I think you end up like manipulating your opponent's range in a fashion that just makes life difficult. And again, that's really fishy, and a lot of people will be like, well, just study harder, edge, or just do whatever. But there's no point lying in my videos trying to pretend there's something I'm not. You know, these are spots where I struggle in. I've done like a lot of like research into my database where I've 3-bet out of position. And when the 3-bet works, obviously I print, but when the 3-bet doesn't work, I'm barely making money at all post-flop. Maybe even slightly losing, and that's with good hands, because you know me, I'm a nit. I don't 3-bet bad hands. So then I look at some of these players who I think aren't too good and are 3-betting even wider than me. I wonder how much they're like losing. They think they're making money like by 3-betting pre, and they are on the 3-bet if it works. The 3-bet is profitable, but if then you're like misplaying tons of hands post flop because you don't really know how to play like when you miss, then how much of that pre-flop edge are you then like giving back post-flop? And I suspect for a lot of players, you're giving back more with your like post-flop deficiencies than you're gaining with your pre-flop 3-bet. Now, obviously, queens is a different kettle of fish because it's a made hand and we can value bet it really comfortably. But if you're going to have like a lot of other stuff in here, like your ace-jack suited, ace-queens, ace-kings, some suited connectors, then all of a sudden, if you're 3-betting, say, 12% or more from the small blind, you're going to be in a ton of spots post-flop, and the way no limit cashes these days, out of position to some at least semi-competent players a lot of the time, and it's really difficult. And I think there's like more of an impact than just how do you play this hand in it. I think there's a lot of how does that affect your confidence, you know, especially if you're someone who's prone to being a little bit get frustrated and tilty and spewy. I think there's more to take into account than just this is what you do in this hand and get on with it, because the effects of 3-betting out of position, pretty high frequency, getting lots of calls because people don't like to fold, and then just feeling lost all the time, that has a massive impact on your confidence and your mental game. And I think that's massively overlooked by lots and lots of like recreational players and struggling regs, just how like debilitating it can be to play these like relatively easy to learn pre-flop strategies because there's charts for it, but then the study you need to do post-flop to get good at playing the spots post-flop is where a lot of people fall down. Right, here's my chart, here's what I'm 3-betting versus various positions, bang, I've done that. Oh, fuck. Now there's a flop come down, and, you know, it's a lot more complex all of a sudden, and I'm not well studied enough to deal with it. So then that's when mental game and confidence issues really, really come to the fore.
When I was playing cash, like, I basically... when I play, well, I've more like on the MTT sort of grind at the minute, but when I was sort of playing cash more, I was exclusively studying just 3-bet pots, because if you think about my strategy is that I would just rather raise fold range, or 3-bet fold range strategy for most positions. Most spots I'm in, post-flop are going to be 3-bet pots. So it's like it makes sense. It made sense for me at least to study 3-bet pots quite a lot because every post flop spot pretty much, minus maybe from the big blind, are going to be 3-bet pots. And as you say, it's easy enough to follow ranges and whatever else charts. There's so many out there for cash, isn't there? There's only 100 big. There's only, you don't need to know like as many as MTTs, do you? Because it's all 100 big blinds. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I just studied 3-bet pots exclusively because I thought that was where like you'd make those. I felt like I was more confident getting into them pots rather than if say you flat a hand like pocket tens, pocket jacks here. You go in multi-way a lot and you're losing a lot of equity with your hand, a really strong hand when you go in multi-way. Whereas when you 3-bet, you just 3-bet for value effectively. I know like a 3x under the gun's pretty strong, so I see what you're saying in terms of like you can't sort of get too out of line. You've still got to be quite tight here, haven't you? I guess, especially to a 3x under the gun,
Yeah, and like, because I'm not defending what I'm doing, I'm not advocating other people should do it.
Yeah.
I'm just giving my reasons for why I'm doing it.
Yeah,
but there
yeah.
is an upside to it though, because you get value in spots where other people aren't getting value because you've just got some stronger hands, and sometimes people will value on themselves against you, or they'll just like they'll think your range is more capped than it is, and they'll try and bluff you more frequently. It just creates some more awkward spots. For me, it makes the game a bit more interesting. I think when you're playing a lot of 3-bet pots and 4-bet pots, you're kind of playing 1 or 2 street poker. And I'm an old school fucking nit. I like playing down the streets. I like slowly putting the pieces together and having a good picture of where I'm at by the river. And I just find that easier in single race pots than I do 3-bet pots.
That's
and
I also like point,
I also like having some traps. It can give me some spots where I can just be more aggressive post flop and turn up with hands people just don't expect me to have. I could do a lot more check raising on flops than a lot of people can because I have more hands that that are strong enough to do it with. And people won't believe you as much because they'll automatically discount some of the stronger hands in your pre-flop range because you haven't 3-bet. And again, I'm not trying to use that as a justification for doing it. I'm not trying to say it's better than 3-betting because it isn't. If I was really good, like if I'd done the study you'd done in 3-bet pots, then it clearly would be a better option for me just to 3-bet and play more straightforwardly. But that, for the reasons I've said, I've found I've played like 100,000 hands of Euro sites in the last 2 months or so. I've been doing a decent amount of 3-betting. Trying my best to like look through spots, speak to people, study it. It's just not going in. I'm just not learning it. It's just too difficult for me. So I'm trying to.
I think you made a good point about the SPRs and stuff, and maybe that I feel a lot more confident 3-betting, perhaps because of my MTT background. I'm more sort of I enjoy sort of more MTT, so shallower stack depths maybe more comfortable. So these 3-bet pots, maybe I feel more comfortable in them because I like it being shallow, and I feel like some of the cash regs maybe don't. So it's quite a nice way of getting into sort of shallower stack depths where maybe my MTT experience helps a little bit with that. So
definitely.
Around, but you like the other way because you're old school, 100 big blinds. You play down the streets well, with deep stacks, aren't you? So you're gaining your edge that way. There's plenty of ways to win at the game, isn't there? And strategies are
of course there is.
Out these stuff.
Without doubt, in 3-bet pots against regulars, I'm not going to say I'm at a huge disadvantage because I think a lot of other players don't know how to play the spots very well either. They're maybe not honest enough to admit it, or maybe they don't realise it. But I think I probably make, like reciprocally, I make more mistakes in 3-bet pots versus regs than like. I'm putting that wrong. In single race pots, I think I can make regs or even fish make more huge mistakes against me than they would make in a 3-bet pot when their range has been manipulated in a way to where they just have stronger hands and things. It just works for me. It's not going to work for everybody.
Better with a wider range, I guess, is what.
Yeah, playing better better against a wider range and at much higher SPRs where post-up mistakes are much bigger. I mean, if you play 3-bet pot and you've got top pair, top kicker, you're probably right just going broke with it. But if you're going broke with top pair, top kicker in single race pots frequently, then you're probably making some pretty big mistakes. There used to be the old saying of don't go broke in a limped pot. I would almost say now don't go broke in a single race pot is a very similar sort of adage to the don't go broke in a limped pot thing, because like people just play so nitty post flop with a little bit of spew in it, if you're routinely getting all your chips in when you've got a top pair, top kicker in 2021 microstakes ring poker, then unless you're in very good games, you're probably overplaying your hand quite a lot. So yeah, that's I've gone over that with like Smart Gut and a few other people. So I don't want to like bore people who watch
no
one
worries.
of my
No, it's
videos with
interesting
it.
conversation. I've heard your conversations with people, so yeah, I do like the conversation, to be honest.
I mean, this hand, it's not standard because we didn't three bet it pre-flop, but I don't think there's going to be like a huge amount to discuss. Whether we go for a checkers and a flop or not, I guess is like the only question.
Um, it's a difficult one. I suppose you still got to be conscious of the big blind defending quite a reasonably wide range. Conceivably could have some suited combinations, two pairs. Shouldn't really have too many two pairs, I guess, or obviously no
I
straight.
think you can have all the two pairs. I mean,
Possibly,
even
yeah.
10-5 suited. I'm more worried
But I
about
mean, he won't have
under
the
the gun.
offsuits. Oh, do you think he defends? I don't think he'll have the offsuits, though, I guess.
No. I think like
So he'll have like two combinations of 10-5 suited, 10-7 suited, 3 of 7. It's not many, but
like I think under the gun's a bigger concern here because he's c-betting a board that isn't that great for his range. Of course, he can have like aces, kings, queens. He can have all the sets. It's a single race pot, but it's the kind of board I'd expect regulars to check back on quite a bit. I don't think this is going to be like firing off here with like the ace queen off suits. Say they've got ace of diamonds, queen of hearts. I don't think they're going to be firing off with that. Hello, Chris Donk. I've never. Oh, well, he's gone again. Never mind. Yeah, so I don't think it's a great spot to be in, but I think it's far from a terrible spot because Villain can still certainly be having like worse hands that he's value betting or like betting for protection or just some like weaker hands that he's just like stabbing with.
I think I'd raise here a lot of times. My worry would be is if he's got aces or kings, then you're probably going broke a lot on runouts anyway. Well, maybe not on this stat depth, but often I always think, well, you've got pocket queens, you're going broke against aces or kings, your hand does want protection, you can still get value from worse because he could have pocket jacks, ace 10, where he could sort of get sticky to a raise. So my worry is if just flat call, you let him get away cheaply with his pocket jacks, ace 10 on future streets, whereas you're always going broke to ace or kings anyway. So in my opinion, I'd raise for value and protection.
See, you said something interesting.
Get money in against jacks.
You said something interesting twice there that he's a bit of a bugbear of mine. You're saying like raising for protection. So what are you wanting to protect your hand from here by raising?
Basically, just an overcards really. So a king, an ace or a king. Obviously, because if you flat here, big blind can come along and flat with all sort of draws as well. So you
true. Yeah, I agree.
Big blind's range as well, but I'm just thinking like heads up pot against under the gun. Because my worry is like if he's got pocket jacks and ace 10, you just call and you either gets away with the minimum versus your exact hand, and then obviously, as I said, the times he's got ace or kings, most times you're probably going to lose the maximum against those sort of hands.
Yeah,
anyway.
Of course, yeah. No, the reason I asked about the protection thing. Sorry, mate. Go on. Sorry, finish your point, mate.
So basically raising you're going broke against that sort of ace and kings anyway. So whatever.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned the protection thing is because obviously I'm in a Facebook group with some like different levels of players. There's all sorts of like levels of players in there, and you see a lot of players here. They'll raise and they'll want to justify it by saying that I want to like protect against flush draws or like strong draws, but strong draws just aren't going to fold. So that was the point I wanted to get to with like the protection thing. Yeah, I get we want to protect against him hitting an ace or a king, or them hitting a 1 out or 2 out with pocket jacks, pocket eights, pocket nines, that type of thing. But I think that the only hands we really protect ourselves against are the like 6 and 4 out, 6 and 2 outers. What I mean is, someone's in here with like an 8-6 or a flush draw or an 8-9. We could make this like 25 blinds here, and we wouldn't be able to protect our hand. The only way we protect our hand against those sort of hands is by like massively raising, going all in, or something stupid like that. So that's a point I wanted to make. But when people talk about I want to protect my hand against like decent draws, You can't do that. All you can do is just overcharge decent draws and long term, print EV from it. People think, and some people out there do think this, that you can make a strong draw fold here with a check raise. I think they're living on a different planet because people just don't fold good draws, do they? It's just not what we're trained to do. It's not what we're trained
I
to
suppose
do. It's also
really,
not what emotionally we're not conditioned to do that either.
I suppose really you're losing when you call. You're potentially losing equity on future runouts where an overcard hits and an ace 10 that Jack's hand doesn't sort of want to get any more money in. There's plenty of runouts where like pocket queens becomes a more marginal value bet, whereas in this spot, I think it becomes a lot more of a. I think a raise feels a lot cleaner for value. Whereas like when you call, like it's going to be hard unless you improve to a set to sort of start sort of charging.
So if you raise here, what are you then hoping happens?
I'm raising and just stack it off. I think I don't know.
No, what are you hoping happens though? What would be your ideal outcome?
I would three bet and I sort of raise and not really be too concerned what he does. If he calls, then I'd sort of try and play from there in terms of rivers, and then if he shoves, then I'm just going with it really. Maybe because the stacks are a little bit deeper, it's a bit more dangerous. But I think still I'm just stacking off here, and I'm just hoping if he's got pocket jacks, he isn't going anywhere. And because if he's got pocket jacks here, which he could easily have pocket jacks here. Maybe ace 10. Is he really going to fold when you raise? I think he's just going to get it in, isn't he?
I don't know. What would you do in his spot with pocket jacks?
Pocket jacks, I would do exactly what he's done opened. Probably.
So if I raised,
probably do the same.
Yeah, say your pocket jacks, you've made this bet, and then some unknown wanker with in the bin son as his username and a fucking kid fist pumping. And this guy makes it 22 bigs. What are you doing with your jacks? Because you're already in like a pretty uncomfortable spot. And the point I'm trying to get at is, I think if we raise here, we manipulate our opponent's range in a raise, but we don't really want to manipulate it because I don't think they have many continues at all with worse hands. I think pocket jacks is one of the only ones, and maybe some 10x, and probably 10x is a better call than pocket jacks here because 10x at least you've got some like two pair outs to improve to maybe, whereas pocket jacks. Yeah. There's not many turn cards you're going to want to see.
But then it's like, I may well fold pocket jacks because you are represented and got a strong range in your three bet. But when you raise the flop, I mean, how likely is it your typical unibet reg here or unibet sort of player here is laid down pocket jacks? Probably going with it because it's. I guess the thing goes in unibet, you don't really have reads on people, so it's like. I guess on Sky there'll be various people where like if I've got jacks here, I'm going with it, and then if there'll be other people where I'm folding within an instant. So it's.
See, I think I disagree with you quite a lot. I think if under the gun, like is willing to stack off with jacks here in the microstates cash game pool versus a small blind, versus any check raise, I think it's a very very marginal play at best. You're by no means printing money. You're going to run into the top of Blues ranges all of the time because people just don't check raise very often. People just don't raise very often in general. So that's why I asked the question. I think if we raise here, I think we are really manipulating our opponent's range in a way that's bad for us unless we know they are especially sticky or stationary. Because I think like, a lot of semi-decent regs or good regs here would be annoyed and fold pocket jacks to a check raise here. I think they're more like a continuous some 10x.
I'd probably call if I had pocket jacks. Probably unless they had specific reads that someone was particularly tight. I would just call.
Yeah.
Probably pocket jacks to a raise under the gun.
So I did just call because I thought it's a spot where population's going to overfold and we don't want them to be overfolding this. But I've paid myself into a corner because of my pre-flop decision. I'm already painfully aware of this. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that raising now, just his aces, his kings, queens, his aces and kings never folding. His sets are obviously jumping for joy. And I just don't think there's like a ton of stuff we can get like really clean value from. I think with aces here, I would raise all day. because then we're getting value from kings, queens, and I would have aces here as well in this spot quite often these days. We're getting get value from like kings, queens, jacks, and what have you. But I think queens for me, it just felt like, you know, I'm not going to get enough value. I'm going to have like going to be fucking myself often against like the bigger pairs that are never going to fold. So I just ended up taking like a pretty passive line throughout the entire hand. I think when he sizes up on the 5, it's not a great card for him.
No.
I don't think this is the sort of size that a hand as strong as aces would use personally. I could be wrong. I think hands like aces and kings still bet here for obvious reasons. They still want to like, get value. They still want to protect the hand against draws. But it's unusual size in a single raise pot when one of the undercards on the flop pairs. It's very rare you see somebody using like a full pot sizing. I don't know what you think of that, but in the games I play, this is a rare thing. You know, it's very rare that when the board pairs a turn, that you see somebody like using a large size.
I think it depends. Like when the board, it depends. Like a lot. It depends position. You know, like the 5's paired, and say you were like in the big blind. Say you'd call the big blind, which you wouldn't do the queens, but let's say for example you're in the big blind, you're more likely to have a lot more 5's. But when you call in the small blinds, the 5's, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much a blank, isn't it? Really, for your range and his.
Yeah.
In a way, so I think like I don't think the big sizing might be reasonable here actually because like it's a blank turn. Basically, all your draws that have called the flop haven't improved. You're going to find it really hard to. You're going to be really capped, really, aren't you? I guess like you're going to be really capped around like hands like you've got here, one per hands. So it does make. I think it makes a lot of sense for under the gun to barrel big when you've got such a sort of capped range, really, because you've got to defend something, haven't you? You know, this is with one of your strongest hands, really, at this point. So, like, if you're, you know, like, he's just gonna, you know, it'd be interesting to see what you do. But I mean, if you're folding this, then effectively you're folding pretty much most of your range, if not all of your range, really. So,
yeah, there's no way of folding. That's
no.
That's not going to be a thing.
Well, it makes sense for him to go big because if your best hand's pocket queens and ace 10 type hands, if he's got ace or kings, you want to go big, don't you? You know, this is interesting. That's interesting.
See, I wasn't too concerned about this because I think at this point, I don't think aces and kings use this size anymore. That the board's double paired. I could very easily have a 10x.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident at this point that I probably got the best hand because I think if he's got aces or kings, he either checks back or maybe he bets smaller. But I think a lot of the time they just check back. They see the top card and the flops paired, and I think most regs don't have a triple barrel in them here with aces and kings. They probably should have, but I don't think they do. So when I see
what
this,
you're saying here is he isn't doing this for value with. He's doing this for value with better than queens, is he? He's basically got a bluff capture at this point. Really,
that was my opinion. Yeah, my opinion was.
I'd agree. I think because that 10 is. I don't know, the close one because that 10 is so much better. That's good for you because you're going to defend basically all your 10s, aren't you, on flop and turn? You've got so many 10s.
And I don't think he uses the size he used on the turn. Say he's got a hand like Jack 10 suited. I don't think he pots the turn with that. I think it'd be too thin to use that sizing. I think his turn sizing is like draws and, as you said, maybe some over pairs. But then I think on the river, then all of a sudden now, no, it doesn't make sense that he would use that size on the turn with the 10. So his story just seemed quite inconsistent to me. You know, on the turn, he's like sizing big, representing like aces and kings. Or maybe some draws or like whatever. I don't think if he turned a full house, for example, I don't think he would have used that size. I don't think he would. The turn looked to me like it was a large bet with like either a decent hand like aces or kings or like some kind of semi bluff type thing that just wanted me to fold. Whereas now it just makes sense to want to like use this side with his aces and kings because the 10 is surely a way better card for me than it is for him.
But he probably, he probably should go. He probably should Maybe theoretically you should be doing this with aces and kings because you in theory because he wants to get value from like queens and jacks sort of hands you've got. But you're right in that how many people find it and how many people just do a half pot type bet rather than a shove. So I think it's a bit. It's basically exploitatively. Is he really ever going to shove aces? So like I don't know. Like probably not. Is he?
And
Like,
to challenge
he's
what
probably
you
got a
said
10 or
about
nothing, has he?
pre-flop, if he's assuming that, and when I play in these games, I assume everyone's a reg until I see something
Yeah.
to show otherwise. He'll have no reason to think I'm not a reg. So surely he won't expect me to have like tons of jacks and queens here, because as you correctly said, most people are just going to 3-bet fold those pre.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to have. I get what you're saying now, like, oh, he's doing this to get value from your jacks and queens, but he's probably going to be discounting a fair amount of them because theoretically I don't have them pre. I thought this was like a really interesting hand because he turns up with something that like surprised me. Because bearing in mind I was discounting like aces and kings, and he's like thin value shoving jacks. I mean, I'm not saying I played the hand well, but I think his river jam is like incredibly ambitious, and I'm not really sure what he's hoping to achieve by it, apart from maybe someone he was in with like 9s or 8s or something like that. I think his line's too thin, basically, on the river.
Yeah, unless maybe he's thinking like maybe like he's thinking you got a hero like ace high or something, but that's never happened, is it? I don't know what he's doing there because it's like it's not achieving much as a bluff, and it's not really getting value from worse. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't.
Yeah, I thought his hand was like but I thought aces and kings were like a possible check backhand. So I think jacks is like a slam dunk
I think
check
if he
backhand.
turns up with aces there, I'd probably say, well, fair play. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely,
probably more reasonable. But saying that, you shouldn't have kings and queens and jacks flat in small blind anyway. So it's a really weird spot.
So this is against the same guy, and this hand was basically simultaneous with the last hand.
Right. Cool.
This hand was just slightly after it, so he'd just gone broke with his jacks. Obviously, I'm a different player at this table, so he won't know it's me.
Right.
But it did have it did give me pause for thought. It's not an especially interesting hand, but if you know someone's just been felted at one table, then it does have it has to have an impact in your thinking, even if you're not taking it too seriously. So we're in our multi-way pot, obvious fish in the pot. Then we just make a pretty standard size c-bet here, which maybe I could go a little bit bigger because of fishes in the pot. I don't tend to go too big with my thin value in multi-way pots. If I had a set here, I'd probably be going really big, possibly even overbetting. If I had like a set of 3s particularly, I would almost certainly have overbet here, just targeting Jack X that's never going to fold and maybe any 4-5s and stuff.
The board texture doesn't. It sort of makes me feel like a smaller bet, like something around what you've done. Is reasonable.
I'm very, very exploitable with my sizings in multi-way pots. I'm virtually face up, and I'm doing a lot of overbetting, which is working out really, really well. I was chatting with Smart Goat the other day. It's just working out really well, just overbetting in multi-way pots when you've got a strong hand that doesn't block any strong hands. It just fucking works extraordinarily well because people are just shit at folding top pair or better.
I think you have to be really tight in multi-way spots, and people aren't tight enough.
No, not even close.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to be printed, sure.
But I went with a smaller one here because A, it's not going to be too hard to get a limb winning against him anyway, and B, my hand just isn't that strong, and it's blocking a lot of like calls. So
yeah, I think it's reasonable.
Went with the smaller size. Can we make this go faster? It'll be a all fucking day. Turn. It's not a terrible card, but I'd rather, obviously, you want the action from this guy, not this guy. But I think we still have a really clean bet on the turn. I go pretty big on the turn.
I think big, because it's a blank, isn't it?
It's
big, charges, draws.
And I'm going big on the turn because I'm probably just want to check back the river. So like, this is the street I'm going to try and get value on. Because if he calls again, I'm probably not going to be doing too much thin value betting against people who are like still a little bit unknown to me. This is the hand, probably wrongly, that I'm not going to value bet on the river very often. I think it's just like kind of marginalish, and you won't use up to a lot of raise. But
this doesn't make much sense. This because
it makes
no sense because turn's not really interacted too much with. Think of the sort of hands that you call like maybe he calls some like sets and stuff on the flop, but like doesn't really make much sense on this turn. That doesn't really change too much of sort of his range. He just sort of decides then just to shove. This makes all sense.
It makes no
I
sense,
wouldn't be
and he's just literally been stacked about 6 seconds earlier. Which, like, normally I would fold this in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even think twice about it. You're right; it doesn't make a lot of sense. But like paying off turn check shoves in the micro stakes is just a license to hemorrhage money against most players, I imagine. So I would. This would have been. I know you think it makes no sense, which makes me think you're leading towards fuck it, just call. I think this is a big mistake to call here, generally speaking. But given he's just like lost a full stack when, especially when he's like he thinks his value bet in the river and he gets called by a hand that's trapped him. I mean, who knows? This guy might be a really good, decent player who doesn't steam, or he might be the biggest steamy fucking thing ever. We don't know because it's Unibet, but I think
Especially we've just seen him stack off. We've seen him go for thin value. So could he ever just do this with like Jack with flush draw, Queen Jack? I don't know. That might be optimistic, but like we've seen him go for like extremely thin value on last hand. Like, could we discount him having worse here? I think he probably could be. I don't know. He could have pair plus flush draw. And just think, fuck it.
yeah.
I'd probably call it based on what.
And that would be a nice line because if he's got like ace three of spades here, he's just getting me to.
Yeah.
That guy I'm going to fold now. He's just getting me to fold all the time. And again, that's something that I talked about with SmartGo in Wednesday's video, where he played a hand against me. I think it was the first hand of the video when I'd flopped a set, and he had top pair. He called my raise, and he turned a flush draw. And he check shoved. I mean, I really loved it. I love check shoving like turns with equity because I think most microstakes regular cash game players are just like hardwired to just like massively respect turn check raises and fold to them. In tournaments it's different because usually you've got happy stacking by the turn or what have you, and you're just like pot committed. I didn't feel pot committed there, and I think it's a great line, and I know James said he thought he overplayed his hand. I actually thought he played his hand really well because if I didn't have a set, he would just have won the pot. He would have made me fold some better hands than what it was he had. So I think ace three of spades there, if he had it, would be like a really nice turn check shove because you probably don't have the best hand. You call and you miss, you just end up check folding. So I think you get to realise all your equity by doing that, but you also just get to put an absolute ton of pressure and on a pool that fucking despises being raised and like massively overfolds to raises.
You fold out better, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do.
You fold out Jack X, you're loving it, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think population, especially like weaker eggs like myself, and let's face it, we're the majority of the population these days. Like you've got your Jameses and your Dans, your loose camels, who are like top tier. Then you've got like there's probably like 2 or 3%, and maybe 5% of them. Then you've got a fucking slug of maybe the next between like 85% to 35% of players like down the food channel who are doing okay, but they're just like mediocre eggs. And that's the pool. That's the part of the pool you can massively target, in my opinion, with like lots of polarizing turn raising. I think they massively, I think they criminally overfold to it. I think they hugely overfold to check raises too, because we're all just conditioned. Forget it's a micro stakes, we've been raised fold, micro stakes raised fold, and we're not well enough studied to know. We know we should be defending some of the time, but because we're not well enough studied to know when those times are and to identify the spots, we just overfold as policy. I know I certainly do, and tons of other players do. They might not admit it, but they just do because I've seen it backed up in my database. Like my like flop raise and turn raise success is fucking enormous. It's I can't remember the numbers exactly, but it was outrageous, which is why I've started like having more flats and doing more like raising, because it allows me to like bluff more effectively, but also have strong hands in my range for the people who get sick of me and just like calm me down a bit later. So if I'm like flatting with the aces, I can then have more raises post flop, and they can't just like look me up thinking this guy's out of line a bit with like top pairs and things, because I'm also then going to be protected by some of the stronger hands that have flatted pre. So I put a bit of thought into strategy. I'm not saying it's good by any stretch, but I think it's really quite good for the games I play in against the players I play against. Theoretically, it's incorrect.
You've got a strategy that, I mean, it's better to have a strategy that you thought about and you think works, and you've thinking about it and always you're sort of talking it through, and slightly changing things than just clicking buttons. So it's
Yeah.
like your strategy. I and others may not agree that's the best route, but it's with logic and thought process, isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, I
So
want to attack a lot of C
do
bets
that.
and regs when I'm in position because I'm sick of like people just have constant every initiative on me going bet. You know, if a reg raises under the gun and triple barrels, you know, we end up making some really quite big and annoying folds, and it's like sick of like not having the initiative that much, but also not having very strong hands. And I also wanted to employ a strategy which is raising more C bets, and if I'm like three betting most of my good hands pre, then my flop raises, they're not going to have strength to them. They're going to be too airy. So by
Mhm.
having some of the stronger hands pre-flop, it means players can't just station me down. You know, if they think I'm being out of line, they can't just station me down. If they do, they're going to run into like hands they don't expect to see. And I genuinely think pre-flop it makes me far easier to play against. Post-flop, I think it makes me like really difficult to play against. I played a hand against Smart got yesterday like a 20p deep table, so we were like 200 blinds deep, and this isn't to dig him out at all. But I
Mhm.
flatted, he opened under the gun, I flatted aces, flop was jack high. Um, he C bet, I just called. I turned top set. He C bet, I raised massive. He came over the top and I called, and he just he had a really strong draw. He had like an open ender and a flush draw. But he said I just didn't think you could possibly have aces there. And if someone as good
Mhm.
as him is like just refusing to put me on aces there, then how many shit regs and like bad regs and fish are just going to completely discount it? And I genuinely think it works really well having quite a more traps in your pre-flop ranges. It does having three bets because yeah, I just think it does. I can't. I'm not good enough. I'm not clever enough. I'm not a good enough wordsmith to explain it. But I think in a micro stakes pool, it works really well to have plenty of traps against regulars because you can just put
Yeah.
them in spots that they just won't understand your range very well and they'll just get confused and they'll make a ton of mistakes. So I accept I'm sacrificing some EV pre-flop, but I genuinely think I'm making more EV post flop due to some of my like EV sacrificing pre flop. People won't agree with that, but I'm seeing the results and it's working really well. My win rates are really good at the minute, and on top of that, I'm just enjoying it more. So it makes me want to play more hours. If you said to me,
Sure.
right, Reg, you have to
Make more
play like
money.
a
Hey, boy.
yeah, you have to play like solver approved strategy, Reg. I'd struggle to put 24, 25 hours a week in because I'd just get fed up of it. Whereas when I'm just doing my own fishy little nit reg thing, you know, and I make
Can I tell
reasonable
you some
tables, I can play for
exclusive?
hours.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry,
Some
mate.
exclusive news, by the way.
Yeah.
Sky have just released a announcement to say that they're doing a Sky Poker Tour in Manchester in November.
Oh, a live one.
Yeah, just this minute. Yeah.
I need to
Sorry
get.
to
I need to get my
throw that in
I need to get my excuses in not to turn up then, won't I? Because
there. Yeah.
I probably won't, but you never know. If I was going to turn up, I certainly wouldn't announce it because that'd just make me too nervous and too anxious. I'd just turn up and maybe have a T-shirt printed with "Hello everybody, Reggie Time here" on it or something like that. I don't fucking know because I wouldn't. I'd
Yeah,
be too
sorry,
anxious.
mate. Yeah, sorry to deviate. I just thought I know you'd be interested in
No,
hearing
I
that.
am. Of course, I am, and obviously, going to be tons and tons of hype in the Discord for it. And it's something that, as an event, I would want to play in, but I'd much rather play it anonymously than
Hmm.
meeting people who I spoke to a lot. But I'm like, well, it just made me way too fucking nervous. I think I might have COVID that week. I think that's what might happen to me that week. I might get contact traced or something, or I might cough a little bit. Anyways, onto this. See, it's the same play from earlier where we had the
Hmm.
King Queen in the 4-bet pot.
Right. Yeah. Daddy did a yeah. Yes, I remember the hand. Yeah. Um, right. What was your thoughts on the sizing
It would,
pre-flop? I mean, I know you've sized down. Is that just more just like sizing down with your weekends,
yeah, well,
sizing up with your
I
stronger
see
hands,
a lot
or
of players would see this as like quite a wet board. I don't. You know, there's no
yeah.
straight draws apart from a couple of good shots around the 6-7, 6-5, 7-5 sort of thing, and there's just a flush draw which I block. So it felt to me like it wasn't a board that we needed to just bet big on. But I wanted to start try to build a pot, you know, in case we hit or you know, so I can like maybe run a multi-street bluff or something. Just felt like it's a good board to bet in general, and with this specific hand, I can bet small, and then if we do get raised, we're just not going to be blown off the pot. We're going to be continuing in some fashion or other. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people look at this board and mistakenly think it's a wet board, and I don't see these boards as wet. I don't think a board's wet until it's got a number of straight draws and a flush draw on it. So if this is like, I don't know,
It's
Queen
quite disconnected,
Queen 10
yeah,
7 with two hearts, then obviously it's a sopping wet flop. This is just a flush draw board. It's nothing else, with a couple of like shit straight draws. Now, if you substituted the king for a 10, you can put the 10 of spades out there, then to me it's a wet flop because there's like every straight draw from 7-5 through to fucking, the queen high ones. There's tons of like gut shots, open enders, and flush draws. This is a dry board in my eyes, so I just used my sizing for like a dry board.
I just thought I'd ask. I think what you said's reasonable. I just thought I'd ask because
Yep.
that seems very reasonable. Yeah. And then just call it as definitely reasonable. Yeah, you're not going anywhere with flush draw, especially when we think opponent's going to be really strong when he three bets. This is a great card for you though, isn't it?
Well, it's where it gets interesting, this hand, because he's check raised a flop and he's betting the turn, which is like a super polarizing line. And then he's used the size of 1/3 pot. I mean, this isn't a thing. I mean, you know way more than me about these spots in terms of like what solvers want to do or what that correct bet sizing is. But this stood out like a beacon to me of like what story is this guy telling. His frequencies are saying one thing. His check raised a flop. He's barreled the turn. So that's saying I've polarized here. But then he's using like a fucking bonkers small sizing, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, from my understanding, it depends. This is my understanding in check raise. Flop bots is a smaller size. It is actually probably reasonable on turns, but from my understanding, more on turns that sort of connect well with his sort of bluffing portion of his range. So if it brought in, let's say the turn was a heart, or it completed straights. So let's say a flush or straight completed turn where the range is going to be really strong. I mean, I've seen generally a smaller size it might be more reasonable. When you think about this card, this card's really bad for his range because for a number of reasons. It makes two pairs less likely. He doesn't really check raise many eights, so he's not got any trips. It makes sets less likely, two pairs less likely. It's a pretty bad card for him, really. So it makes me feel like when he does bet, he wants to bet big, really. That would be my. That would be my thoughts. Like you wouldn't want to bet. I think you'd want to slow down a lot here. And so when he does bet, I think it makes a lot more sense to be betting bigger. I think once it makes much sense.
When I see stuff like this, I just think it's either a really bad player not knowing what he's fucking doing, or it's just pure bullshit of like, I don't fucking know. Maybe he's just trying to like prevent me from making a larger bet. But I think check raise and block betting is it's just pure nonsense. And if there's something that's going to make me go off, it's this. I'm guessing that you and most people are probably going to say, just call here. It's, you got a nice price. I'm going to raise. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, if you think he's just if you think his type of person is just going to be over barreling turns on sort of really unfavourable sort of turns like this, I don't think it's like particularly.
No, I don't know enough about him to know like what he's doing with his frequencies. For me, it's just like this. Given the line he's taken so far, this size is just pure as bullshit.
No, that's what I mean. So if you think if he's just barreling too much and for a small size, and then the raise is going to work a lot, isn't it? Really. So if you sort of raise here, you're it's going to take down the pot a lot. My only worry is that how many eights do you actually have, really, and like how many strong hands do you actually have when you raise, really? I mean, you're probably going to be folding like your second pairs to the raise. Like, what sort of hands are you going to find for value here? That would be my only worry.
You're making an incredibly valid point. But if somebody is somebody who takes this line, which I think is pretty bad, but I could be wrong. Someone could come in the chat below the video later and say, this is completely standard range, just what computers are doing. But in my opinion, this makes him look like a bad player. So is a bad player going to think that the same thoughts you've just expressed? Or are they just going to be like, fuck? Because this looks to me like he's either got like a weakish king that he's like, oh, fuck, I've been called, now I'm just block betting, or just some random pure bullshit. But I think we're not likely to be ahead. Well, I think we're almost never ahead. But I think he has like a decent amount of hands that he's just going to have to fall to a race because he doesn't have an 8 very often. Maybe he has fucking quad 8s exactly. I think pocket fours probably bets bigger. I think his flush draws, which would block, either check or bet bigger. And I think his king X just bets bigger because the eight's not very good for me. It's not good for him either, but it doesn't really change very much. So he can still confidently go ahead like barreling his like king queens, his king, maybe his ace kings that he didn't 3-bet pre. Who knows? I don't know. It just felt to me like it's a good spot to raise. So
What are you trying to get him off? Like, what do you think he's got? What sort of hands do you think he's got, and what are you trying to like? What are you trying to target for folds, basically, when you raise? I
um,
don't mind it. It's just I'm just interested to see what you feel you're trying to get him off here.
I think stuff like king queen and king jack start to get in a pretty
Mm-hmm.
tough spot. I think you can just have some random nonsense, some ace high bullshit that's just going to fold.
Right,
Um,
right, yeah.
Maybe if he's the sort of player who he's like raising pairs between the 8 and the king to quote unquote find out where he is, or just maybe because we played a couple of pots with him that haven't. Basically, I've been pushing him around a little bit this session, not because of how good. We had the king queen at the start, which was like just bullshit versus bullshit, but I've been making some hands against him, and like in small pots, I've just been making him fold a bit. So I had it in the back of my mind, maybe it's just a little bit of him being a bit irritated by me. But again, who knows? There's no idea. But I think we can make him fold a lot here. We're not making him fold an 8, clearly. We're not making him fold like any kind of draw. I do think we can, if we raise big enough, we can put tons of pressure on King Jack, King Queen, King 10, and all these ace high bullshit on the flop's just going to like insta fold. So I do think we carry like
Yeah.
a decent chunk of fold equity against his overall range. And if we do get called, we still have outs.
It's one of them. It's one of them spots where it's like Cole's going to be fine. It's good. Cole's going to be plus EV, and then it's a case of do you think a raise is going to be make more money on average? So it's a bit of it's weighing it up, isn't it? So if you think the raise is going to make more money than calling, then raise is going to be fine. It's just hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to know what an unknown player on Unibet is. Are they going to fold King Jack, King Queen?
Yeah.
It's hard to know, isn't it? Especially an unknown. That's so. I'd be a
I
bit
think raising
concerned trying
makes
to
money.
pick him off King.
The issue is like what sizing do we go? Because obviously if we clicked it back,
Yeah.
that wouldn't make money. That would it's just not going to fold anything almost. If we went all in, we're probably going to win the pot the hell of a lot of the time. It's like what size do we want to be going here? And I've watched like and I'm almost certainly misinterpreting what I watched, but there was a Doug Polk and Garrett Adelstein podcast out this week, and they were talking a little bit, and I read between the lines a bit about like the frequencies which they were making like outrageously large sizes, and which is one of the reasons why I made the massive raise size against Smart Goat yesterday. They were like they were kind of talking about like some of the bluffs they pulled where they've just gone like 3x pot and made really big bluffs, and then not having no idea basically if it's right or not. Just like basically say to your opponents, do you have the fucking balls to call this bet? Because it's a fucking big bet. So I started making my raises because this is what a monkey see, monkey do, monkey misapply. That's kind of what I do. Then I'll kind of figure out, oh, that's going okay. I'll keep doing that. Oh, that's been a disaster. I'll stop doing that. So I've got a bit of a like semi on for big sizes at the moment. So
So you're 35.
I'm
I think you want
gonna,
to be going. I wouldn't raise much here at all, but I mean, if I was going to raise it probably 30, 35. You want to be putting maximum pressure on King X. You want to be going, yeah, I think that's...
yeah.
If you're trying to target King Jack, King Queen, then it's going to have to be something around that size, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, if it piles, it's grim because we probably have to fold and we're like burning some equity. As this is one of them
I think it's
spots
fair
where
to
I could
say
just hear like Destiny Cod in my ear saying, "Fucking hell, why you're
Yeah.
raising here? Because you just if you jams, you're just folding so much equity."
Yeah,
And I
that's
totally
it,
have
yeah.
sympathy with that argument. But I'd have more sympathy with it if I was playing in a pool where I thought people would like re-jam light here, and I don't think they do. I think if I get re-jammed on here, I think my jack eye flush draw might be close to dead. Or
Yeah.
pretty fucking slim. I think, like we've maybe got, if we get jammed on here, we've at best got, 18, 19%, and at worst, we're drawing dead. So I wasn't too
I
arsed. I'd
think
have
we
been
think this
annoyed.
guy's a weak reg as well, don't we, from previous actions? So
Yeah,
So taking lines that make no sense for value as a bluff is going to work better against the weaker opponent, then let's say if this is a more competent opponent, then
Yeah, I would never
finding
do this against someone like
raise
yourself
is
or
a bit weird. Yeah,
Dan or Smack
makes no
or
sense.
I would,
Because
yeah,
yeah,
you're gonna be like most other good regs. If something doesn't make sense, you're gonna give it less credit and you're gonna play quite well against it. So this is definitely something that I would do this against lots of like weaker sky regs, and there's fucking plenty of them, myself included. I would do that against plenty of them. But I wouldn't do it against a good player because a good player is just going to blow me off by equity too often. I don't think you'd fold a king here, for example. If this was you, I think you'd have a different size on the turn, but I wouldn't try and make someone like you fold a king here because I think
here
I'm
I
drawing dead
wouldn't
making you
shove.
fold it.
I wouldn't shove. So someone raised 37, I wouldn't have a. I'd just be calling because even with the strongest hands, it makes no sense to shove. Because let's say I've got pocket. Let's say I've got. I'm trying to think of something that's likely to have. Let's say he's got like top of it. Let's say he's got full house like pocket fours, king eight, or whatever. Like, doesn't really make sense for him to raise when you go like this big polarized bet. It probably makes sense just to flat those hands. So really, if I was Mickey 493, I wouldn't have much of a shoving range to this raise anyway. I'd just
No, but my point is you wouldn't fold, would you? If you had like a king queen
yeah,
here.
I would. Well, that's it. Yeah, like I know what you mean. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily fold the hands. Maybe you're targeting. I may well. I may well do. I don't know, but yeah, you're right. You're right. Probably.
Well, you're certainly less likely to fold them over the next few days against me if we clash, given the fucking some of the spew I've been demonstrating lately. Anyway, this guy ends up folding, and I was quite pleased with myself. But the reason I put that hand in was more to do with like I thought my sizing on 37 would be like a lot of people were like that's way too fucking big, Reg. What on earth? You'd only bet 6, you bet in 37. So I was quite pleased when you said you want to go 30. I think you said 30, but I was quite pleased when you said. You want to go a big size. Because I imagine a lot of players there would probably just want to go maybe 3.5x size, and maybe just go to 18 to 20 blinds.
You're raising for value, and as I said, not that many, but it's going to be trips and better. So, like, probably it does make sense to go bigger because the hands you're representing for value do want to go bigger. So, it does make sense, I guess. Yeah.
This one, I'm not really sure why this one made it. I looked at it back when I was recording. I think it's not that interesting. But we do the big boy raise pre. Something that I do pre-flop is like I look at the size of the pot. If I'm out of position and I want to isolate, I tend to look at the size of the pot and then just double it. Just so I'm doing things consistently. I don't know if that's a good strategy or not, but just so I'm not doing things consistently. Like, right, there's 4 blinds in the pot. Let's just make it 8 and go from there. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to achieve here. I guess we're just trying to get heads up with somebody.
You're probably going to go 4-way though.
We don't, but we do flop absolute G. And this hand isn't that interesting, so we just like skip through it. But what size would you go here though?
I would check, and I would check because I often just check. People don't necessarily. People haven't really. I've been checking a lot out of position in multi-way pots recently, and it's sort of been quite useful because I always think here, like. I'm going to start off with a check because, like, you think of this board like King Jack 10. It's like you've got 2 limp calling ranges. Like, it's quite likely that they've interacted with this hand in a way, in a roundabout way, and you're going to get one of them betting. And when they do bet, you can obviously put a raise in. I'd just start off with a check.
See, I think that's where I disagree with you in terms of how this board interacts with their range, because I think like if you're playing against a lot of like loose passive people just want to limp call a lot. Yeah, of course they're going to have some King X in there. They're going to have some but we're blocking quite a lot of the hands that we want them to have. We're blocking King Queen. There's a King on the board. We've got a Queen. We're blocking Queen Jack. We're blocking Ace Jack. We're blocking Ace 10. We're blocking Queen 10. And then those cards are also on the board. I think a lot of the time players are just going to have like small to middle pairs and like middle suited connectors are just bricked a lot here. And I haven't brought you on here to argue with you because I like you too much. But I think like if we're checking here to loose passive opponents, I think it's quite a big mistake when we flopped like really, really strong. Yeah, of course, the hands I've mentioned aren't going to call anyway, but I don't think they're going to bet enough. I think like these players are just super, super passive. And I think, excuse me, I think maybe if someone's in there with like a King Jack or a King Queen, they'll bet those, but they won't fold them either. So I'm not sure checking really achieves that much. Because are we really expecting like these loose passive guys? And we haven't got stats on them, but assuming that there's something like, I don't know, one of them's
But if you check
24
here,
slash 7
obviously,
and one's say 40 slash 3, are those types of players just going to start stabbing with their pocket sevens here when they get checked to by the razor?
if you check here, it's not like you, you can still if you check here, start with a check. Obviously, they bet, and you can get the money on the flop more than, and then even if it checks through, you can just barrel turn, barrel river, and get the money that way at that depth anyway. So it's almost like
Yeah, no, I understand the point you're
you
saying.
can just get it over two streets anyway.
Yeah.
I just when you've got two people to act, I just think check and let someone just overvalue the king x. Because if you bet and someone's got like a king x, if you bet, they're gonna just call. Whereas if they've got king x, you check, they're gonna bet, probably call off a jam, sort of thing. Like that'd be my thought process checking when you've got two people to act. I'm checking pretty much my whole range when in this spot, and that might be terrible. Maybe like pocket kings, pocket tens, pocket jacks, may bet them. I think with this you've got a straight, you've pretty much got it reasonably locked up. I don't know. I like starting off with check, but a lot of people don't really agree with that. And I've had this discussion with a lot of people in multi-way pots, like starting off with a check out position. People sort of like don't really like the idea of doing it, but
No, I don't like it.
It's been working quite well for me recently, but it's different strategies and different.
Of course it
things
is,
work for
yeah.
different people.
I mean, there's like, I mean, because you and I have quite different players, people are going to play against us differently. The same player would play differently against me than they would against you. I guess what this says, that our disagreement on this hand is just like highlighting maybe our different opinions on like the player pool. Because I see this just checking through an absolute ton. When they have like air, which if we're checking here, we're gonna hope to make them like find some bluffs or find some like thinnish value bets, and that is precisely what I don't think the majority of this is like the general microstakes player pool does anywhere near enough of to justify checking here. I think the hands they're going to bet are going to call anyway. So let's just not have it checked through and see an ace roll off or a queen roll off or a nine roll off or a heart roll off, and then like potentially miss value from their jack tens or something like that they can definitely have in this spot. And the reason we're choosing different lines here, I think, is just our different opinions on the pool. I guess as much as anything, you think they're gonna like have quite a few high cards that will just bet and call off. I think they'll have them, but they'll just call anyway. But they won't find the bluffs in these spots. They just won't find them. And this pool, generally speaking, isn't turning pairs into bluffs. They're not saying, oh, pocket eights, this guy who's 8x'd it has fucking checked, so he's capped his range, I'm just going to attack to cap range now. Those guys don't think like that, and they don't play like that. So I think it's a pretty bad spot to check, personally.
I'm not checking to like give someone rope to bluff. I'm just checking to let them overvalue, like let them bet call off or still get value against their hands that they, basically they're like weaker value hands really. So it's not really like I'm not checking in a way to like induce a bluff necessarily. It's more just checking to.
No, I understand. I do understand.
Sort of,
you're checking to let them bet the hands that I'm saying I think they'll call with anyway. So it's kind of, it's just like, what's the best way to play against their range that's going to stay in the pot, I guess is, and I guess when you flop this, well, it doesn't fucking matter. We're arguing over something that doesn't matter, because if they have connected with this board, whichever way we play it, we're getting the money, aren't we?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So I decided to go with something that you're clearly going to hate. I went with an overbet, and I'm not really sure why I went with an overbet here, because we've got a really, really strong hand, but I was hoping there was like, I didn't want things to come around. I wanted them to have like, I don't know, 10 jack, king 10, king jack, or maybe like two tens. I'm not worried about like blowing them off hands like pocket eights, pocket sevens, like I don't know, fucking 10-8 and stuff like that. I think if either of these players are in here with like a pair plus a straight draw, they're not folding no matter what. So if they're in queen 10, jack queen, like ace 10, like anything that's like a pair and some kind of straight draw, they're likely not folding. Maybe a hand like ace 10 might fold, it's just a good shot. I think if they're in there with two pair, they're not folding. In there with sets, they're not folding. So this is something I'll do that I know tons of people will hate, because it doesn't give them like any room to call with shit hands. But I'm not worried on these sort of boards. I'm not worried about like eking out a little bit of value from pocket sevens here or what have you. And just right, let's just hope one of these guys is connected pretty well, and let's get all the money in before the board changes in a way that's going to like discourage them from putting the rest of the chips in. I kind of want to try and get it all in this street or create a situation where it doesn't matter what the turn is, it's just going to be like the most trivial jam ever. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that in general, because I think like lots of like modern strategy is like aimed at targeting all parts of people's ranges, where when I do this, I'm only targeting like the strongest parts of people's ranges to try and get the money now before the board changes too much.
Yeah, it's one of them though. It's like the board change. Yeah, I'd agree the size is a bit big because you don't need to go. But I mean, the board changing too much isn't really necessarily a bad thing with your exact hand, because like the board changes a bit and you probably still have a straight, and then you're blocking the like it's good to hold the ace of hearts when the flush.
Yeah, I'm worried about the board changing to discourage them from continuing putting money in. Like if a queen comes, we've lost 10 jack and 10 king and king jack, all the two pairs fold the minute a 4 straight comes out there.
So that's also why I sort of don't like this. That's also comes into my reason is why I don't like betting as well, because when I check, I feel like it's more likely that the money goes in on the flop when I check and someone bets, and then I jam. It makes I feel like the money's more likely to go into the flop on the flop, whereas when I bet the flop, someone's going to call, and then someone's going to call in position, and then the board might run out in a really bad way, and then you don't get that money in against sort of king X or some random flush
when
draw
I'm doing this,
you know, that
it's designed to force 2 pair plus and maybe king X to shove on me, because I want them to look at this board and think, fucking I've got 2 pair here, but I can't just call. So I guess it's like, instead of you're wanting to check shove, I'm doing this to try and force them hands to shove. But I guess what my line does, it stops anyone from ever stabbing light. But as I said, I'm not too concerned about like trying to like incorporate some of their weaker hands that maybe sometimes stab or maybe sometimes call versus smaller. The check raise is designed to like obviously felt 2 pair plus, isn't it? And I guess I'm doing this to try and felt 2 pair plus, and just going about it in a different way. I don't think I liked this after I did it, because I think my hand's just too strong to do this with. So yeah, I'm coming down to you. I don't think I like checking though. I still think I like betting, because it's going to check through so often in these pools, and then some absolute arsehole of a card's going to come off, or you're going to have to bet big twice anyway to get or big-ish twice to get the money in. As it happens, this is like pretty boring. This guy does just call. He's trapping me. Or he thinks he's trapping me anyway, because he had the queen 9 off that just limp called 8 bigs pre, which was very nice of him. I thought it very civil of him, very civic minded. But yeah, it's hands like that confuse the fuck out of me. Yeah, limp pot. I mean, these are the ones that confuse the fuck out of me on Sky. No, of course not. Limp, then we get 8 exit, but this batters my head in the Sky, because you get in these spots so often on Sky, where you've got the ace queen or the ace king or the ace jack. You've made this big ISO pre, and the people just don't fucking fold. And you know how often do you flop the nuts? Almost never. And it just makes life really, really fucking difficult. So quite often on Sky, even with like some pretty big hands, I'll just complete the small blind, because it really tilts me when I get to post flop. There's 32 bigs in the middle, because every cunt who's limped has called anyway, and I'm sat there with ace king with just with me fucking dick in my hand on the fucking like queen high flop, not having a fucking clue what to do with it anymore, because everyone's fucking called. So I think they're not. If you're playing like Poker Stars or Triple Eight or GG, these are spots you're not going to see. If you're playing Unibet or Sky, they're not frequent events, but they're frequent enough where it limps to you. You're in the blinds with like a really big Broadway hand, and then you get really excited until the flop comes down, and then you just feel like the most deflated fucking man on earth, because what do you do, Swogg? Just out of interest, like, if you do isolate the ace king and you get to the post flop with 25 plus bigs in and you miss, so you're just routinely giving up against like the typical Skyfish population. That's what I do.
In that spot there, multi-way.
Yeah.
That out position there. Yeah, I mean, because I'm probably taking more of a strategy, especially with 2 players left, so we're like checking my whole range. Like I'm just not really betting at all there, like in multi-way pots. To be honest, especially on that particular flop, really, just
Interesting
not
what you just said
not
then,
betting.
because that's something I do quite a lot, but I think it's what I picked up from when I was playing PLO. So if you're in a multi-way pot out of position, I'm not asking you to give your entire strategy away because we
Yeah.
do play against each other. Did I catch you right where you said you're pretty much checking your whole range out of position in multi-way pot?
It
Because you are, I
depends.
think it's a nice strategy a lot of the time.
It depends. It depends on the flop texture and the positions of who've called and like who's in the pot, various other things. But like generally speaking, I'm trying to look at like the range of hands I've opened. So let's say I've opened. Give you an example. Let's say I've opened the cutoff, the button's called, and the big blind's called. It's quite a common scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then a lot of flops, you'll be sat there with quite a wide range from the cutoff. So I almost feel like a lot of your range is just missing the flop completely. So it sort of feels like on a lot. It depends on the flop texture, but a lot of the time you sort of sat on the flop thinking, well, probably don't want to bet much here because the button's got quite a tight range, and you've got quite a wide range with the cutoff. So yeah, like generally sometimes I am sort of in some spots
No,
just
I think
checking
it's
the
a
whole
good thing.
range.
I think checking your whole range out of position multi-way is usually a good thing. Like I said, except on Sky, if you've got I think checking your whole range is a good starting point, but then deviate like I'm doing to exploits. So when you've
Sure.
like if you flop bottom set, for example, so you're not blocking
Yeah.
anything that people can call with, I think it's an enormous mistake then to check. But if you've got
Yeah.
top set, for example, then maybe it's probably quite nice
Yeah.
to check
But if you've got
because
like good regs in the pot, because a lot of the time you think like a lot of the time I think I'll be sat there like thinking, oh well, I'm in a spot here where I don't know what hands I want to see bet and what I don't, but I know like checking's going to be reasonable anyway. So checking's not going to be losing money necessarily, EV wise, and like betting. Like sometimes I think, well, I don't know what to see bet in this spot, so it's easier to implement a strategy of check everything
yeah,
in some
absolutely.
spots. I find it easier to do
They're the sort of
because I don't know
simplifications I love.
I don't know what to see bet basically.
No, you're right. And
um,
like, 'cause I picked it up from PLO where you're just not supposed to see that position very often at all.
yeah,
And like when you're playing like no limit on like a fast fold site, you're mostly playing just heads up pots. But when you're playing on a site like Sky, it's not like playing PLO, but it's a bit more like it because you've just got so many hole cards out there against you that just people are just more likely to be connected in some way, like they do in PLO. Whereas heads up, it's just you against me. Then I'm as unlikely to be connected as you are. But when there's say 6 combinations of cards out there, then it's way more likely some cunt bag somewhere's got a little piece of something that maybe can't take a ton of heat, but you can't apply a ton of heat because it's a multi-way pot. So yeah, I
yeah,
get
got
that.
to be careful. Some like when a reg flaps like the cut off a button on. It's like they're gonna have quite a tight, narrow, condensed range, aren't they? So like a lot of time you've got to be careful, haven't you? Like out of position against those sort of ranges.
So
For sure.
this one's a weird spot. Again, it's not super exciting post flop. But like
Yeah.
pre flop, you've had a limper and a poster, which you don't often see on Unibet. So like I think I should have made it bigger. I've misapplied my
Have you
own
ever
rule.
just limp it? I never know what to do. This is interesting spot because this is really weird, interesting because so basically when I'm facing like a limp and I've got a hand like this, I don't really know what's best to be honest. Like is it better? It feels better to feels all right to isolate it, but I never know. I never know what our isolated range should look like,
No,
and
I
what we
haven't got a
should
clue either.
overlap with, and
Just pretty stuff for me. If it's not
yeah,
pretty. I knew this guy was a reg. He was at every table. He seemed reasonable. I
yeah,
didn't know anybody else. This guy's clearly just sat and he's posted, which is hard to do on Unibet because I sit all the time but I never post. And it never. You've clearly got to click something that I don't even know exists. Because I remember last time we did a Unibet video, Tommy D said that you could post on Unibet, but this guy's found a way to do it, so he's probably not going to be a good player. This guy's limped under the gun. I think there's too much dead money just to limp because we give this decent reg on the button a pretty good squeeze spot. Not saying he's going to take it with any two, but I don't know. I think my issue with this is I think it's always a raise, but I think my raise is a little bit too small. I only got a 5.4, and there's already 3.6 bigs in there, so I think my raise is a little bit too small from this position. I think if it was button, and this guy had checked his post, I think 5.4 is going to be fine. But I think when we're out of position,
Yeah, I
we
think
kind of
10-9
just got to
suited
take
is a
it down
better
pre.
isolation than, let's say you've got like ace-2 suited. I feel like ace-2 suited it might be a better overland because your drawing's like nut flushes, whereas when you overland 10-9 suited, you've got to get cooler on flushes.
Yeah. And on top of that, with
You
ace,
know,
if you actually hit the ace deuce and then you hit an ace, it just gets really messy.
true, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, we just flopped in here, and it's when it checks to us, it's.
So here's the spot where, like, we were talking about multi-way. Again, cash might be different because there's rake and other things, but here's a spot where probably I'm just checking my whole range because, especially when you've got a call from the button, call from the, they're going to be very heavy around kings and a 10. And I'd be struggling to think of like what type of hands I'd want to see bet. So I'd just be thinking, well, I'm just going to check everything.
Yeah.
Even though I'm losing some EV from hands that want to see bet, I just find it easier to play a strategy of see bet, checking everything.
Yeah, I wanted to check raise this, just while
Yeah.
I had confidence in my equity.
Yeah.
Obviously we could be up against sets or whatever, but we've got like a flush draw, we've got backdoor, straight draw. So I was never going to bet here. I was checking to set up a check raise, but sadly it's going to check through.
Yeah, which isn't too bad actually, is it, when it checks through? Because it's sort of like not the end of the world when it checks through.
Not when you're going to hit a good turn like that. And then this guy does something, not this guy, but this one's going to do something a bit strange.
It's a bit of a worry about being cooler there, though, isn't it?
So he's like bet less, about quarter pot out of position into 4 players. So now I think we have a pretty clean raise. But
I think so.
are you raising or are you happy just calling?
If you went bigger, I'd call. When he's gone small, I think a raise is probably better. Like if he goes like 75% pot, I think call's more reasonable, but definitely raise into this sizing.
Yeah. So what size would you raise to, given the pot's now 33 bigs?
So I'd go like 33. So you go 33. Probably go like 20, 28, 29.
Can't remember what I did, but I think it's going to be probably in that region, I would imagine.
28.
Oh, I went fucking much bigger. Ugh. I guess this is me still carrying out the Doug Paul, Garrett Adelstein misapplying the fuck it, make huge raises. I mean, I did a bluff raise to a huge size earlier. I guess it only makes sense to do like a value raise to that size. Yeah. My opinion was he wasn't folding because when official leads out...
You want to give that illusion of that you've got full deck, that he's got full equity. When you go this size, and it sort of makes literally everyone around the table know that you're not folding to a jam when you go this size in.
Which makes it
a bit smaller.
Yeah, which makes it, if they do jam, I'm fucked, aren't I? If one of these guys jams behind,
exactly, you can't fold. You want to give that illusion like someone's got full equity if they want to sort of get out of line. Not that I think anyone will get out of line, but I think this sizing just makes it. You're pot committed, aren't you? So
yeah,
that's why I don't. Yeah.
My opinion on this was I wasn't too asked about these. I'm going broke against these anyway. I think when like someone who's clearly a recreational player limped under the gun, he's called that he's used this size on the turn. He's never bluffing here. This is literally never ever a bluff. And again, it's one of those spots where I've got a good hand, but there's tons and tons of action killers on rivers, and I kind of wanted to just have him jam a worse flush. Maybe he's got an ace queen or a set or something. And I just wanted to like put him in a shove or fold spot really, and I didn't expect him to fold very often at all because he's led into multiple players on a pretty dynamic board, as Juice would call it. And the river come, and at first I fucking hated it because I'm like, oh fuck me, I'm beat by an ace high flush now. Then I realised I'd got a straight flush, and it changed my opinion on the situation. But I hated it when I first saw it. I really hated that card. I'm like, fuck, this has gone wrong.
Oh, you got the gin card there. You just hoping he's got ace of hearts, aren't you? Just obviously no decision here other than all in, is it?
I was thinking of going 56.5 so I could slow roll when he shoved, but
I don't think he's got ace of hearts though, like because a lot of people just
they just course they would just lead it.
I think you're going to get a lot of folds, sadly.
Well, you would think so, but some people just call with the like low end of a straight.
He's not a believer.
He was absolutely an unbeliever. Here, I don't make the size big enough. I don't like my raise size.
This is another spot where I'll probably just check. Yeah, whether it's right or wrong, I'll be checking a lot.
Yeah.
But
bet, and this guy who I thought at the time was a fish because he's the guy who posted earlier. Then that's a really shitty turn card. This is where I didn't find this one too hard, to be honest with you, but generally speaking, it's where I really struggle against regs because we'll just play it through to the river.
Yeah, I like check.
If he's a reg, he's gonna, you know, he's gonna know that's a bad card for me in general. Let me get to the river, and he's just gonna make a big bet, and then I'm gonna explain why I struggled a little bit. So he's gone like with a pretty big sizing, and it's a spot where I'm pretty much at the top of my range for like getting to the river this way, and like so I had this going through my head. I was having like an internal fucking argument with myself with like, you fold this red, you fold in pretty much fucking everything, but at the same time, how often do I think the population are, like leveraging their fold equity against me? And it was like I was really umming and ahhing. Right, I think I went into the time bank with this one, which I don't do very often, because part of me is like, it's just a fold reg. It's a big bet on the river in the micro stakes. You've only got one pair. It's just overfold and don't give a fuck. Where the other part was like, well, reg, if you're folding this, what are you actually fucking calling with? Because I get to the river here with aces and ace king as well. Maybe pocket kings, although I suspect I would probably just continue betting pocket kings on the turn. Rightly or wrongly, I probably would just continue betting that. So it's kind of like you're right at the top of your range, or very close to the top of your range, and you're going to fold it. So I'm being really exploitable because I'm just not calling here at all, hardly ever, which feels shit, but paying off feels shit as well.
Yeah, that's why I like when you're like coming back to like, I don't keep having it on, but like just coming back to like checking more on the flop is like, especially when you're out of position, is like it makes it really uncomfortable on turns and rivers when the board changes like this. This is a sort of board changing turn, a straight completing turn, which makes it really awkward for like top pair type hands. Whereas when you check, you get a lot of information about the in position player's hand when you check out position. You're expecting them to bet pretty much their top pairs plus. Like you get a lot of information from when it checks through on the flop, and then you can sort of barrel big with your top pairs on turns and rivers and get value that way. Like here, like when you bet the flop, you've sort of inflated the pot a bit, and it's such a really tough spot now, isn't it? I think if you think this guy's like a reg of some kind, I think you've got a call. I mean, if you've got specific notes that someone doesn't bluff, then like whatever, fold. But
no, I didn't know. All I had so far on this guy was he limped and like just posted and then called that previous hand. I hadn't seen much of him. I think we play another one hand with him later, and I've got more information by then. I mean, I can tell the information. Yeah. I think he's a bad reg. He's 2 or 3 times in this session he used some pretty dumb 3-bet sizes. When he was out of position, there's one hand right at the end which I'm looking forward to showing with you because my head was just frazzled with it. But yeah, I think at this point I didn't know it. It turns out he is probably, in my opinion, a bad reg, but I didn't know that at the time. Whether I would have, I think, if this hand had happened after some of the previous hands we'd played, I think I would just have paid him off here.
Yeah.
But I did end up folding because I just thought, well, I think he's maybe a fish. I don't think fish find bluffs here often enough, and he can have a ton of Jack X. So I just ended up.
It's like suppose holding the queen's not a great bluff catcher because like if he is going to find some bluffs, like a queen might feature strongly as part of that line to
exactly.
Because of the way he called pre, called flop. So probably not terrible. I mean, you're probably folding close to all your range stuff. Sadly.
So it's the spot, I guess, where you would maybe check again. No, it's heads up, so
no,
you probably wouldn't check.
Not here, just because we're like heads up is a bit different. Yeah, I mean, I'll probably just be betting. I will be betting big there, like 3/4.
I did check there because I felt that this player was like, he was a fish. It was very obvious he was a fish by this point, and I just wanted to have him. Like maybe just put me on 2 high cards and bet. My plan was to check raise the flop and just like try and trap his 10x.
Yeah, I think check raise is actually. I think check raise or betting big's reasonable. I don't think either's terrible, to be honest. Like, I think I'd just lean towards just betting big and not letting him just check behind with like a random king, queen, ace, and letting him sort of you know,
Yeah,
sort of
no, yeah,
sort
of course, yeah. You don't. You are risking a
yeah,
Broadway card coming off that's going to fuck you a little bit.
yeah,
So we lead the turn because we don't we just want to get some value. We pick up flush draw,
yeah.
and we don't want to let a free card roll off again. And then he fucking clicks it back, which shame Juice isn't here to see this because he'd be in love with this, wouldn't he? But I mean, now what? I mean, it's just call, isn't it?
It's cold, but I mean, what then? I mean, yeah, yeah, cold. Yeah, I mean, you're not even loving it on a club, like, but
And then Rivers in a similar spot to the last hand where he's just going to go half pot. And I don't know if we should be calling here some of the time or not. We've got a
I
club, so
think,
we block flushes. I don't think the ace changes very much because I don't think he min raises with an ace in his hand on the turn, unless it's exactly the ace of clubs. Maybe he does then, but probably not. So like we're facing a half pot bet. We do have a blocker to flushes, but that's not that relevant against Fish, I don't think. But it's just half pot. If he bet bigger, I think it's a trivial fold. But when he bets half pot, what do we have to be right? We have to win like 30% of the time, don't we? Something like that. Is it?
yeah,
Do we
something
just
like
flick a
that.
do
Yeah,
we flick a call in here, or do we just think they've always got us fucked? I saw the ace as a brick personally. I thought this guy's either got a flush or he hasn't most of the time. Maybe he's got like
he may have
a
had,
turn set or
he
something.
may have had like an random ace of clubs flush draw, and he's at a top pair, like, an ace of clubs, random sort of flush draw of ace of clubs, and he's at top pair that, and outdrawn you that way. That's another possible. And
This is the spot
you're
where
going to have a lot of it. You're going to have a lot of ace X yourself. Potentially, you'll defend your ace club. Your offsuit ace club hands there, won't you? I guess
yeah,
sometimes.
definitely.
You're going to have stronger hands to call with, like, an ace, for example. But oh god, I mean, probably just fall because it's just a mid raise. Like, what on earth is like? Are you ever good? But could he ever do? Could he be just some fish who just does it with 10x and?
Well, this is it.
It's so weird.
I've been doing okay these last few months. I posted my graph in Discord, 100,000 hand winning at 4 bigs 100, which feels really, really shit to me, but is pretty standard. And I've been making tons and tons of these calls and losing all of the time. I mean, I don't recall like like losing so many pots by just calling rivers where it's in spots where it's pretty close, and then it's just never close. It just really isn't fucking close. People just don't find bluffs, or they just don't bluff rivers. It sounds like a fucking tired old cliche, but there just isn't a lot of bluffing going on in microstakes cash. There just quite simply isn't a lot of bluffing going on. This felt like it was a bit of an overfall because of his size, and because we do have a fucking blocker. How relevant that is, I think we both agree it's probably not that fucking relevant. And I did end up folding here.
I feel like the fish bluff a bit more in cast than tournaments, though.
I think
Just
fish
from
bluff more than
a
fucking
little
regs do.
bit.
I
Some
genuinely
players
do.
just
I think the only
yeah,
times regs bluff now is when someone caps their range or when they're like just continuing with the initiative because they were the pre-flop raiser. I actually think now I'm much happier bluff catching against fish than I am against regulars. I think regulars just
yeah,
are not finding. Anyway, I think they're overthinking shit tons of spots and just getting confused, probably playing too many tables, all of those things. I think
yeah,
a lot of regs now, especially a lot of like the ones that I class myself in that like not top tier regs, but like middle tier regs, I think they are just so, especially on rivers, so passive, so weak. I think just like paying off is futile against them because they just have it way, way, way too frequently. But I think fish don't. Fish can just turn up with some random nonsense that regs don't turn up with. But I did just fold in the end because I'm tired of. I've been paying off for 2 months now and it's not been working out fucking well. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't even remember this hand, so we'll just see what happens. It might be a pretty boring one.
Yeah, seems good start. I thought you would have flat then, and then
No,
would have been
the flat comes
pointed.
now. You wouldn't flat here, would you? Or would you?
I don't know. Maybe I think flat might not be that bad here because actually I probably would flat. Yeah, I think you'd want to. I think aces might want to flat here. Yeah, I think it's going to be fine. Just because of how shallow we are post flop, aces is going to hold up well on flops. Yeah, I'd flat. I think I'd pure flat aces. Yeah, and then you'd flat some stuff like pocket tens, pocket jacks, maybe ace queen, and then you may just jam like ace king, pocket queens type hands, pocket kings. But I think aces is a more than reasonable call there.
This is almost a nut low board for this situation, isn't it? Or am I being over scared?
Uh, Possibly, I suppose. Like, still have ace king, couldn't he? I guess, but you block ace king, don't you, a little bit? But it's a little bit shit. But you're also going to have pocket kings, pocket. You're probably also going to have like potentially pocket kings. I sometimes I don't know whether you maybe sometimes have king queen suited, but I don't know. It's not terrible. I mean, you're obviously in.
I think my point is, given that we've got the aces and we haven't reopened the betting pre-flop, he's going to have a lot of kings and queens here, isn't he? I think the nine's pretty irrelevant.
Yeah.
But he can have the sets that I theoretically can't have. He can certainly have two queens, play exactly this way.
He could have 6 combos of pocket. Like, he's going to have 3 pocket kings, 3 pocket queens. Ace king, he'll have, what will he have? 2? He'll have 6 ace king, won't he? I think, if I maths correctly. So he's going to have an equal mix of like ace king and sets, isn't he? So
it's a spot where I was just like, right, you're going broke, Reg. If he's flopped a set, you're going broke.
Yeah.
But I did check to allow him to bet.
He's loving life with ace king, isn't he?
Oh, he's absolutely loving it. Yeah. So he bets, and I'm going to raise now because I don't want to see like a 10 or a jack coming off. I don't particularly want to see the board pairing the queen or the king, even though I don't think he bets a queen here very often at all, if ever. Just like, what size would you go to here? Because
I think it's just a jam.
I don't like what I did. I really don't, because I don't know what I'm trying to achieve with it. I virtually fucking clicked it back, and I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't. I went about 2.5x, maybe 2.25x, and I don't know why I did this.
Jam, isn't it? It's not. You've raised to a size where you're not folded into a jam, so you might as well just jam yourself. I think it's just a jam, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting too cute here. I was probably just trying to, like, if he did somehow have a queen, or if he had a fucking a random king jack suited or something, maybe I was just trying to price in something stupid that obviously against like his ace king and things, you're getting all the money anyway. I don't know why I did this. It's just unnecessary fancy play. And I think maybe he got me a fold when I didn't want one. Possibly if I jam, I get a call because he folded. And I think if I jam, I maybe get more calls by jamming than I do by doing what I fucking did. But I don't know.
It might be fine.
Could be very result orientated.
If you're a bit deeper, it might be fine. But I think the only raise size you want is a jam, just because.
Yeah, that was definitely on the shitty fishy side. So here is this what you'd just be checking again? Like we min raise pre. And we min raise, but cut off calls, big blind calls. So we're in the sandwich, if you will.
Different there because I'm opening under the gun. You're gonna sort of be a more tighter. So you're gonna hit this board a little bit more if that sort of makes sense, because you're gonna be opening a lot of ace x. So like this board, so it's like. I'm trying to think of like my overall range, how it interacts with the board. Whereas if I'd opened the cutoff, then maybe I'd want to check more because I've got so much more hands that I've missed. But here is a little bit different, I guess, because you're gonna have quite a lot of like ace x and stuff and king. I'll probably still not really know what to see better and just check everything. Really, I'm sort of trying to think of like what rate hands in my range I do want to see better. And if I can't really think of that, then I just sort of check. That's maybe a shit way of thinking of it. It's just, yeah.
So here against a fish, so this fish is called, and I wasn't like massively scared of that turn card. Yeah, of course, the turn card could have improved him in some ways, put him to 2 pairs. It obviously that improved him to a flush.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to just slow down and check it. I'm not sure if I should or not, because I ended up betting, and I'm not sure if that's any good or not. I was just kind of target all his like worst ace x, like ace queen, ace jack, ace 5, ace 6, ace 7. But if I'm going to bet 13 here, if I am targeting like his weaker ace x, is this too big for what I'm trying to target? So I was a bit confused when I look back at this one. Like, I think continuing to bet he is reasonable against a fish, but the bigger we go, the worse we manipulate his continuing range. For against our hand. If we bet like say 4 big blinds here, for example, something stupid which I wouldn't do, but if we did, obviously he's going to continue with like a lot of hands that we got crushed. If we went all in, he's only going to continue with hands that have us crushed. So like where's the middle ground? And I think 13.2 is just a little bit too big. I think I should have probably gone half pot, maybe slightly less than half pot. But I don't like going less than half pot on turns much.
I don't mind it because I think if you think of like some purplus, if you think it's like some like 8x with a heart, like he's got to call 13. Think of ace queen. I can't. He's probably got to call. He'll call another bet with ace queen, ace jack, and like he's got so much like random purplus draw type nonsense. I'd imagine even like some king queen or something or whatever, king queen of spades or whatever. He's still going to call that. Yeah, I think I like 13. Yeah, I mean, God.
Yeah. Now what?
I mean,
now I'm even
more
regretting
with
it.
a plan. So like when you bet the turn, it's like I'm a betting to call off. And to be honest, what was your thoughts? Was it betting to call off or betting to fold
I didn't
or
expect a raise from this
bet and
player.
hope not to
I'd seen this player a lot, and I wasn't. This is the first time I'd seen him do this. He was very passive, so I just wasn't expecting a raise. So if I'm betting there, not expecting a raise, when I see a raise, I'm probably just going to fold. I think so. I wouldn't have had the conscious thought of, I'm going to bet here and I'm going to fold to a raise, because that's just like hardwired into my brain. Passive players raised, just fold reg. So I guess I'm bet folding without actually subconsciously bet folding rather than consciously. Against a better player, I would put more thought into it. I'd be like, right, well, am I going to bet fold here or am I not going to bet fold? And that would like influence my sizing. Against this guy, I was just going pretty big, try to target his like worst ace X. And then when he raised, again, it's one of those spots where it's like I'd probably have better hands to call with, but it's still a pretty good hand against a fish. And I felt a bit dirty folding it, and I did end up folding again. And I'm not sure I probably should against this player type.
I mean, I'd probably call with the king of hearts and fold this one, but this is where like because I'm doing a lot more checking on in these multi-way spots. I very rarely get into these spots where like double barrel turns because of this reason. When like the turns and rivers sort of become really awkward, like I feel like it makes it easier to play because I'm not inflating the pot on the flop so much, if you know what I mean, or I'm
absolutely.
like raising flops and getting it in on flops more. So it's swings and roundabouts. But if you're making a really exploitable, nice bet fold there, like you're gonna still be printing, aren't you? Because this guy's probably got you.
Yeah, I think we'll fold 20 raises. I think the bet prints money from his calling range. I think
I agree.
It makes a ton of money. And when he raises, you just got to be willing to make the fucking make a sad face and fold, which is what I did.
You'd have all like two pairs. You'd have like loads of two pairs and other stuff to call with there anyway, aren't you? So
I'm not sure why this video ad's going on as long as because I think this is the last hand, but oh no, it's not. No, it's not the last hand. It's another one. So here we flop a flush draw. Not sure what's going on. I min raised pre. He called. Again, that's a board where I'm just going to see bet small in my entire range. Again, I guess that it's two tone, and people would see it as being a wet board. I don't. That's a dry board to me. We just bet. He calls. Yeah, this one is. Yeah, I think most people aren't going to like what I do here. He like snap called the flop, and then we get. I mean, this board's clearly way better for our range than his. I'm not discounting the fact he can have top pairs and things, but this is a turn card. In my opinion, we just, even though we've got like a bunch of equities, we could just check back to realise we have to keep the pressure on here, don't we? I think it's just like such a way better board for us.
Do you know, a lot of time when I small bet flops and then a turn comes a blank, there's gonna basically it's just like I always try and like look to sort of like make an excuse to bet big, like because you want to put maximum pressure on, like because he's so capped there to like. So when you've got an ace, I think if you go like pot or close to pot, like I won't blame him because you're just putting maximum pressure on so many weak holdings.
What if I go like, 2x pot?
This is. Camel's going to love this, and I like it as well, mate. I like it.
Because I want you was like overdoing it here. Obviously, I know that I can just call if he clicks it back or whatever. So I'm not worried about being blown off my equity. I mean, it'd stink if he made like a really big raise. Because
how often is he going to raise?
No,
like,
not.
You're making such a polarised bet. Like, it's quite nice to do it with this because when we come back to like what we're saying about, when COD says you don't like bet folding these type of hands, well, betting big makes it less likely to raise. So it's like, it's quite nice to do it with a hand like this because you see a river pretty much all the time. I don't mind. I think it's all right.
And he like absolutely fucking snap called. Are you done now? or are you like emptying the
I'm
clip?
done. Just because I just don't like holding I know like blockers and all
Oh, then
that
we've
stuff,
got ship
but
blockers.
I just don't like. Yeah,
We don't want diamonds here,
no.
but I don't like giving up either.
And when he calls turn, it's like what? Like it's just he's gonna have overfolded a lot on the turn. It's like he's gonna be left with such a strong range now. It's like gonna be hard to get a bluff through.
By the way, I'm disappointed that you
Right.
haven't seen the using in more Sky Regs that are then Wales.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
That's disappointing, but that you still haven't picked up on
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It's not.
anyways, forget that. I ended up doing this because it's with the speed of his call on the turn. I'm like, this guy's just got one pair. It's all he's got. Maybe he's even just got a draw that we can show down against, but I didn't think, given his snap called the turn, I didn't think he was calling, but I didn't want to just make a normal sized bet. So like, fucking.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like this.
I'm not sure. I'm far from sure of it. You can see him up and down with it. I'm like, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it?
The type hands he's going to call turn fold river with are going to have the ace of diamonds a lot. So like when you're doing this, you're like it's not blocking the hands.
I'm trying to make him fold a king here. That's what I'm trying to do. Is that a good idea? I'm trying to get him off stuff like king 10, king queen, king 9, stuff like that. Is it a good idea to try and make it?
Stuff as well, isn't he?
It's going to have what? Sorry.
He's still going to have a lot of two persons.
Oh yeah, if he's got that, I know he's never folding. The only reason I jammed this river was because of the speed of his turn call. I think if he had a set or two pair on the turn, he would have like taken more time. If you just go back to like look at the speed of his turn call, he literally did snap call the turn. I know we're running this faster. I know we're running it faster, but he called within like 3 seconds on the turn in real time.
Yeah.
So like he doesn't. I don't think he has a really strong hand because I think when a really strong hand sees a turnover bet, they stop and think about it. So this is like more of a.
That's fair, yeah.
I think he's given off a time intel.
Time intel, basically, yeah. It's not something I'm sort of get to. I'm not that aware.
Well, this
of,
is another thing that
like
people who play tons of tables won't pick up on, and sometimes time intel it could be pure bullshit. But I think usually when people have a strong hand, they don't do anything really quickly. I think when people snap call, it's because they've just got an easy decision. It's all they can do. So it's either snap calling with a draw or he's snap calling with a king. I think if he's got an 8, he takes a bit more time and probably folds it. So when he snap called the turn, like, right, this guy's got a king or he's got a flush draw. So the question is, do we just check down and hope to beat his flush draws, or do we just like jam and then, hope he folds a king? And as you can see, that my cursor went back and forward because I knew we had shit blockers for this. We don't want any diamonds when we're doing this. Of course, everyone knows that it's fucking poker 101. But at the same time,
the time thing is what you said is. I mean, theoretically, like you don't want to learn ace diamonds, but what you said about the time intel and the turn makes a lot of sense to me, and so that makes a lot of sense. What you said on that, so it's probably fine.
So I think this one probably going to be the last hand. So this is the guy who we're now defining as a bad reg. He's the guy that posted earlier. He's the guy that made us fold the king queen on the king jack x jack board, and now he's used this not a bad sizing, but with a limp and a 4 big blind open. I would expect most regs to use bigger than 11.5 here versus the 4x when they're out of position. This is almost something I almost never do, but it felt like he'd 3-bet me a few times. He'd 3-bet me once and we'd got to showdown. He'd 3-bet me with ace 10 off. And I think I'd caught him 3-betting somebody else when I was watching. And he 3-bet another not great offsuit ace. So he's definitely out of line with his 3-bets. And I don't think he's using particularly smart ranges.
How out of line? Everything's going to be a little bit tighter given you've ISO, so you're a little bit tighter. His 3-bets may be a little bit tighter than the otherwise would be if you just opened button. So everything's going to be a little bit tighter, but everyone said, I think most things ace 5 suited, it's like, oh, that's a good 4-bet bluff candidate. So.
Yeah, it's literally the only hand I 4-bet bluff with. Apart from king queen in the first time, which looks like a correct laying cunt. But yeah, this is the go-to 4-bet bluff hand.
So it's interesting, sizing wise. Like earlier, you used the 3x 4-bet in position. This time you've used just over 2x.
Yeah, that's because in the first one he made it 6.6, didn't he? And I wanted to like get the pot up to more of like a 20 blind
Right,
sizing,
okay,
if
yeah.
you will. If he'd
That was
have
true, yeah.
I explained at the time that normally I like to make my pre-flop 4 bets 2.2x, 2.25 to 2.5x. But when some people go small, I'll deviate and I'll go much bigger because I want the pot to be a similar size to what I'm used to seeing in 4-bet pot scenarios.
Yeah,
Whereas
that's
this,
fair enough. That's fair enough.
so
If you had aces or kings, say you had aces, you'd use the same size, I guess, against this
I'd
opponent,
maybe
or
even
would
go,
you
I'd maybe,
responsibly go bigger?
no, I'd probably go smaller, I think, against this
Right.
guy. Not much
Yeah.
smaller because there isn't much smaller you can fucking go. But I'd be very tempted to go very close to actually just clicking it back or very close to clicking it back because I think this guy's pretty
Yeah.
spewy.
Suppose we get away with being a bit like unbalanced, given we're using different names every time we sit down on
Yeah,
Unibet. Like, no one's going to get reads on us if we start being really sort of unbalanced with our bet sizings and whatever else. So probably more reasonable on Unibet, isn't it?
so he calls. Yeah, on Unibet, you could be as exploitable as you want on Unibet. I think the only other place you can really do it is on like Bavard or Ignition, whatever the fuck it's called, in the zone. When I used to like chat with some Americans and helping them with the games, I used to fucking love watching the zone games because you could just do so many fruity things because no one knows you from one hand to the next. It's literally but this is semi-anonymous that you know it's you got the same players at the table and they can see your name on like Ignition Zone. It's fully anonymous and it's their version of speed poker, so it's like fully anonymous speed poker, and you can
Right.
just do so many like out of line exploitable things there. And if you're not doing them, I think you're probably making a mistake.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to this hand. Um, I had no idea how to fucking proceed here. You know, we flopped really well, but have we almost flopped too well? I don't fucking know.
What
4-bet
what
pot, we
what would you want
flopped
to do
trips
with
to the shit
kings?
kicker.
What would you want to do with kings or queens that you might? I'm just trying to think of your value hands. So let's say your main value hands are going to be aces, ace king. Let's go through them. So like aces, what would you do with aces? What would you
I'll be
want to do
checking
with aces?
pocket aces back like 100%.
What check? Yeah. What about pocket kings? You'd probably be doing the same.
I don't know. In a 4-bet pot,
Maybe not.
I think maybe I'd rightly or wrongly, I'd probably bet really small with kings just to prevent them
Mm,
making a larger bet on the turn. I think
right.
if we see bet kings here, we're gonna see a free river. Whereas if we don't see bet kings here, I think we're going to be forced to pay to see a river sometimes.
What about ace queen? Like oh, you might not have that too much. But or ace king. Sorry.
Ace
What would you
king,
think about?
probably small with that too. I think.
Mm. So
Good afternoon, James. By
in
the
the
way,
main, like you
James
put
has just joined
all
us,
with
mate. In
everything.
case you don't know, just for the record.
Yeah.
A smart goat. Well, you've caught us right close to the end, I'm afraid, James. But welcome on in, sir. In case you want to have some input, we'll just go back and replay this hand for you, so you're not just like anonymously. So, oh, he's gone again. Never mind. Bye, James. So we get back to where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
with
then
Ace King, I'd probably bet really small. So the bottom, I'm just going to range bet an absolute ton.
ball, yeah.
But then it's
Yeah.
like, so then do I have to do it with this particular one, or can this one be a check back?
Um, yeah, it's like it's quite difficult 'cause it's like I suppose he's got to still have like a reasonable amount of. He's got to have some ASEX as well, isn't he? I mean, probably. I don't know. I mean, I'm not well studied at all in
Me either.
cash or bet pots, but like feels like maybe just a range bet, simplifying a range bet, or just simplifying to a range bet. But like someone might say like, oh, in this spot, like opponent's going to have too many ASEX, so we don't want to be doing that. So it's a tricky one because someone might, I bet someone might say, oh yeah, well in 4-bet pots, like out of position's got so many ASEX here that they defend the 4-bet with, like we probably want to be checking a lot. Whereas I'm probably suggesting betting range, and it might be terrible, but I'm just telling you what I'd do. I'd probably just bet range just because I don't know any different, but
No,
I'd just bet
and
range.
I think that's probably what I'd do most of the time, except for my read that this guy
Really
was
strong.
a bit spewy, and I didn't think he was very likely, if ever, going to spew if I bet, because it's just so easy for him to put me on like on an ace X hand. So I didn't think he would spew by betting, I didn't think we had a hand that could just like get all the money in for value. I mean, we're still pretty deep. I don't think you can like bet flop, bet turn, shove river, and expect to get called by worse. So I thought my best chance of like, you know, we either bet now just to take the pot down and like just get out of a tricky spot, or try and get out of a tricky spot, or we tick it down the street a little bit against somebody who's spewy and give them chance to bluff a little bit. Because if I bet and keep betting and he keeps calling, I think we just lose a massive pot. Whereas if we check, he might be one of those players that's spewy enough to maybe just try and take us off something.
I think checking with like your worst trips combo's good because it's more reasonable. Like it's almost like with Ace King, you probably want to bet because you dominant, your cooler all is like worse Ace X. But with you, this is probably your worst Ace X. So if you do want to mix in some checks, this is probably a better candidate to check than say Ace King.
Yeah, which is what I went for.
Yeah, I don't think that's terrible, especially when it's quite dry. But be interested to see what he starts doing now. Right. Okay. Probably just call him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything to do other than call here.
Yeah, okay.
Especially given my read on the player.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we're just going broke here, I think. Just going broke.
But
yeah, well,
right. So this is where again I was like, I had two conflicting thoughts because my first thought is Pool's never bluffing here, just never. It's just not what they're doing. But then the other thought was, but you think this guy, you've checked back and just only called the turn because you think this guy is going to do some like spewy stuff which you're trying to exploit. So again, I was in like a bit of a state of flux because I think against population, I thought you said call. It's a very easy fold against population because they really finding a turn bet and a river bet to this size in a 4-bet pot. Are they really going to
question why you check the flop? If it almost feels to me when you check the flop, it's like most runouts, it's like you're gonna have to call turn a river. So it's like I know that might be terrible, but it's just like check flop. It's like you're giving him rope, and it's like, oh, I'm going to call turn, but then I'm going to fold river. It's like,
yeah,
it's almost better. I'd almost feel better bet folding in a way, betting the flop and then.
And that's ultimately where I fell down into. Like, look, you can't check back this flop to that fold to this guy when you check back specifically because you think he might be spewing. So I called in the end. And I was like pretty surprised he turned up with that hand because I get that it's a reasonable 3-bet pre. But, I mean, am I totally wrong here by saying that is just not a call pre to the 4-bet out of position? Or is it?
What odds did he get?
Well, he got pretty good odds. I made it like.
You made it 20
something blinds, didn't they? He's getting 20, good odds.
So he's calling it 10 to win. Probably.
So at the end of that hand, I thought we both played it shit.
Terrible.
I thought we both played this hand pretty bad. It's not a good advert for microstakes poker, but I don't know. I mean, I guess the question I'm asking is, I would literally never ever call with his hand there. I would just fold. So like, is he right to call there given the odds he's getting? Because if he is, then fair enough. I've absolutely no issue with it. It's food for thought for me. But I mean, I'm very rarely 3-betting ace-5 suited from the small blind anyway, rightly or wrongly, because it's just not part of my strategy. So I don't know how I'd respond when I faced 4-bets with it. But it feels like a pretty crummy hand to defend versus the 4-bet.
Yeah, it's weird because he's used it as 3-bet bluff, but then calling a 4-bet, so it's like a bit weird.
But then again, he has good equity against aces. He has good equity against queens and kings, doesn't he? He's probably getting close to the right price pre. But then if he is up against aces and kings and he spikes his ace, then where does he get his value from?
And then by ace king,
It's just like it doesn't feel like a good spot for ace-5 suited to me because I get it pre-flop. You're getting good odds to suck out on queens and kings, which is going to be like a big part of my range. But when you hit your ace, how do you get paid? Against queens and kings, you just don't. And then when you are up against a bigger ace, you're just going to get absolutely fucked. So it feels to me like go on, mate. Sorry.
4-1, isn't he, on his money? 3.5 to 1, 4-1. He's getting good odds, but so it might be close. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't say I know.
It feels to me like he's got to call pre because he's getting good odds, but he's getting like a bargain on something that does he even want to fucking buy it? It's like I might better sell you a really smart fucking 4K HD TV for 30 quid, but if the volume doesn't work and can never be fixed, it's fucking useless to you. So it's kind of that, a lot of the time I think people are like just taking their direct pot odds pre and thinking, well, I'm just getting good odds, so I need to call. But then post flop, just getting themselves in the mess where it's going to be really hard to extract value from somebody and not at all hard to get value owned.
This might not be a guide to 4-bet bluff then, because it seems like it's the sort of person who's going to 3-bet and not fold anything.
Yeah, well,
bets with.
As a session went on, it seemed. Yeah, so he was 3-betting ace 10 off, which, as far as I can tell, is not a 3-bet in any situation. Ace 10 was just not one of the hands you 3-bet with. He was doing it from like the button, and he was 3-betting like offsuit ace X's from the blinds and things. He was quite active, which is why I eventually thought, yeah, this guy's is either a bad reg or he's a very active fish, and I couldn't really figure out which. It's hard when you've only got like one person, and you can't get stats on Unibet, so you can only really the only read you've got is what you see. And this session only lasted an hour and a half, and maybe only played with him for an hour. So what's that, 40, 50 hands? It's not enough, is it really? So you've got to pay attention to showdowns.
3 might have helped. The 4-bet, it goes like 26, 27.
Yeah.
Just maybe more like 2.2, 2.3, 2.5 might have helped, more than min raise maybe just felt like you got the odds, so you're not getting.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not pretending I played the hand well.
I don't know.
My pre-flop sizing is bad, especially when you consider how deep we are. I think, especially when we're starting the hand 150 bigs deep, we just need to make our 4-bets bigger. So I'm not for a second saying I played the hand well. I'm not trying to like dump on this guy, saying like, oh, you played it badly and I didn't. I think we both played it badly. To be honest, I think my sizing was.
I think you chose a nice hand to do it with for sure, and I think you played it. I think it was a reasonable line post flop. And to be honest, it's just a minor point, isn't it, on bet sizing? But really, I mean, I don't think it's a reasonable candidate to do it against someone who's active.
It's a minor point, but it's still important that I've missed a spot. Sure, I've not even noticed. The reason if I'd have noticed how deep we were, I would have gone bigger. So that's me just like losing concentration and probably being annoyed by him. So I'm like, fuck you, you're getting on my nerves, mate. I'm just going to 4-bet you here. And I haven't even looked at stack depth. Because I had looked at stack depth, my 4-bet would have been upwards towards 27 big blinds for certain. And maybe at that depth, I wouldn't even have 4-bet it. I maybe would just appeal because we're deep, we're in position, we've got a suited ace. So he's clearly got under my skin and triggered me a little bit because I think I've made a sizing mistake that's just based on me not paying enough attention to the setting that we're in. I'm in position, I've got a suited ace, and I've reopened the betting to someone who's fucking wild. So he could easily just like 5-bet me because but wild's wrong, but certainly out of line. So he could easily 5-bet me, which I wouldn't have enjoyed facing. And we've got enough stack depth to maybe just flat versus his relatively small 3-bet pre. He's asking us to put less than 8 bigs in pre, and there's at that time there would have been 140 bigs behind. So actually looking back now, I'm not even sure at this depth. I think 4-bet is still fine pre at this depth, but not the size I chose. But I think flatting can definitely be a consideration at this depth too, especially against someone who thinks out of line. So I rushed the hand a little bit. Well, I didn't rush it because you could tell by my. I don't think I rushed it, but I know I would have emotionally because this guy was definitely triggering me a little bit. So let's just see.
How do you find tournaments? Like you said that about you miscalculated the stack sizes. Like, how do you feel when you table in tournaments because that's a massive issue in tournaments around like in terms like that the dynamics of stack sizes, bounties, other things is so much harder in tournaments to keep track of.
I'm really for tabling in tournaments, right. So it's I tend to play like the most I'll play any one night on Sky would be like the mains that aren't choosing Saturdays. Or Fridays, because I don't play the Friday main either. So it's like just the bog standard mains. Then I'll fire a mini in, even though I think they're fucking awful. And I'll fire a mega stack in, and then a mid-X later on. And every now and again, I might, throw a 10, an 11 pounder or something in, but I think they're pretty shit as well. The ones after midnight are pretty soft as fuck because all the regs have gone to bed by then. But like I think that those 500 guaranteed 11 pounders are just pure aids. So I'm never playing many tournaments, and I'm not very good at mixing tournaments and cash. If I'm one tabling a tournament, I can then 3-table cash. But if I've got 2 or 3 tournaments, I won't play cash at all because I'm just not good at fucking mixing them. So I just put my head in the tournament zone, So when I'm three tabling, I'm just more aware, and also I'm more aware because you just know the stacks are all different. Whereas in tournaments, you kind of just get, oh, it's 100 bigs, 100 bigs, 100 bigs. And I've clearly missed that would started this on 150 bigs deep, because then I think flatting and four betting bigger are both viable. My size at depth was fucking awful. My size wasn't great, full stop, but at the depth we were at, it was even worse. But luckily, we got away with it. But
I think it's nice when you look at it back at hands and you're beating the games for what you're beating them, and you're still realising there's so many different things to work on, and I think that's sort of how you've got to where you've got to, and making a lot of money because you've always constantly been honest with yourself where your leaks are and where you're falling down, where you need to improve. Because a lot of regs are just sort of like thinking, oh well, what I'm doing's fine, and they just get on with it, and they're not honest enough with themselves where they need to improve. And I think the likes of me and yourself are like, we're always like trying to improve, aren't we? And that's a good mindset to have with poker, isn't it? And
yeah,
I remember speaking to you 6 months ago when I was sort of up and coming, improving and whatever else, and still am. It's just like, I think that was some of the things you said to me around that sort of thing, and like your mindset, and it's so important. So I learned a lot from my early days speaking to you on that sort of thing, just getting in the right mindset with poker, reading the mental game of poker and all that sort of stuff.
and I think like technically, there's without question, I'm like inferior to most regs. There's no question about that. I do stuff to like the flat in pre. I do things that probably shouldn't be done to make life easy for myself. But I've got a ton of soft skills that loads of other regs don't have, and I know this because of like down the years I've spoke to so many fucking people. Microstake. There won't be many people who understand the microstakes better than me in terms of the whole package. There's people who understand how to play technically better poker than me, but in terms of the whole package of like try to mix playing poker with work, try to mix study with work, bankroll management, management of your mental game, the whole thing. There's more to it than just knowing the correct frequencies. There's way more. If you think all poker is just knowing the correct frequencies, then you're drawing dead. You've got fucking no chance. Because there's so much more to it than that, And so I'm happy enough kind of having a reasonable idea what regs are trying to do, so I can like defend myself against them as best I can. And then I'm very, very good at exploiting fish. Probably better than most regs because I play fewer tables, I pay more attention to what the fish are doing, and I'm willing to take way more like stupid, unorthodox, theoretically unsound lines because I'm playing less tables. You can't do that. If you're playing 12 tables, you cannot be adjusting to regs, to fish, and doing that the super hyper. You can move into some exploits, of course you can. I'm not saying there's no wiggle room, but you can't do like some of the absurd stuff that I fucking do in terms of like massively overfolding or some of like the enormous bluffs that I fucking do. And that when they get called, you look like a total sputard. But generally speaking, if you've got a good read on the situation, they work pretty very high frequency. So yeah, I get tons of people. Like people comment on my videos, oh, he's just a fucking shit reg, this and the people comment at the tables. And fine, they're probably regs that are better studied than me, but they're not all round better poker players than me in terms of like the whole fucking thing. Because a lot of them are underrolled. They don't have as much spare time as me to like process their emotions and get over things. They're definitely way. I mean, we all tilt. I'm not saying I'm tiltless because I can tilt like the best of them, but I do it at a way lower frequency than most. I'm way more self-aware than most, and you've touched on it. You've got to be self-critical, but you've got to be fair on yourself too. Sometimes you just don't fucking know. My biggest moment of self-criticism is when I knowingly make a mistake. That's when I get tilted. If I make a mistake that I didn't know was a mistake, then fine, I just found something to learn from, and I don't care about that. It's when I make a mistake and I know it's a mistake, and like, you're just putting it off fucking, I don't know, 100 big blinds there, Reg, and at your volume, making that 100 big blinds back takes fucking 5.5 hours or whatever. So it's just like I've just undone 5.5 hours fucking work there, and that's when I get annoyed when I like knowingly make mistakes. But yeah, the vast majority of Sky Regs would beat me in a poker quiz, but as I said to James on Wednesday, there'll be almost no Sky Poker Regs that have a better win rate than me in terms of big blinds per 100. Because they just don't do a lot of the other stuff as well as I do. I talked about it with James, where there's like so many of them, and again, I'm not going to dig them out, I'm not going to name them, but you'll know who they are because you played with them. They're just playing every single available table most of the time they're playing against people like Dan, playing against people like James, people like Coco Pops, and there's not enough fish at the table for them to offset their lack of edge against the better eggs. So they're playing all these tables and they're losing to the rake. They're not losing a lot to the rake, and then they get in because they're playing so much. They're obviously making priority at the end of the month. But if you're on Sky and the vast majority of your profit comes from rake back, you're doing it wrong. Your profit should come from the tables, and your rake back should be the cherry on the top of that cake.
The games far softer. There's easily soft enough to be making a reasonable amount of money.
Yeah. If I'm doing it right, playing my A game and table selecting, I'd bet a lot of money. There's no way we could ever prove it, but I'd bet a lot of money that I'm winning at like 15 bigs to 100 still. Very, very easily, possibly more. Because quite often I'm table starting against fish because regs don't really like table starting that much. It's not as good these days. I saw Poor Juice last night. He was holding the Twitter lobby all to himself, and there was no one. That's why I ended up playing on a Unibet session, because I had like a couple of Juice's tables open, waiting to sit in and Jesus eat his fish, because that's the sort of cunt I am. And he was just poor fucker, who just sat there on his Todd. I mean, Sky's gone downhill cash game wise in the last like 6 months. So after the lockdown boom, Sky's really dropped off on cash games. Tournaments still seem to be really soft. So I have to mix in some of these Euro sites just for volume. But I think I've been around them all now, and Unibet's easily the second best option. As you see by these games, they're still very soft Unibet. But yeah, to go back to my point, there won't be many Sky rigs with a bigger win rate than me. Now, that's obviously tempered by my lack of volume. There'll be certainly tons of them with a better Audi than me. But, I would question that they're still not having necessarily the correct... And maybe there isn't tons of them with a better Audi. Maybe they have a better Audi once the rate back comes in. I'm not sure, but I can think of loads of them, and I could name them to you like off YouTube, and you'd be like, yeah, I agree. There's loads and loads of them who are solid players, and I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not good enough to be using the method they're using for getting their volume. They're not good enough to be sat at tables with both Smart Go and Coco Pops on. They're just losing. That the one fish with 75 big blinds is not enough.
Yeah. I usually try and find an excuse. Well, usually try to sit quite quickly if there's 2 or 3, 4 regs. I mean, it's just good practice, really. Find a different game. There's always other games somewhere else or on Sky or whatever you can play.
Yeah.
Why sit? Yeah, that's my. And I very rarely play. And I don't have that issue too much, because whenever I play cash, it'll be early hours of morning Friday. It'll be Friday evenings after the tournament sessions, Saturdays, just weekends, and generally it's not going to be hard to find an easy table at that time anyway. So,
I'm on the fence with your game selection, because sometimes I look at tables and I'll be like, there's an empty seat and I won't take it. And at other times, you'll be on wait list, I'll leave, you'll join, and then you'll snap leave again. So it's obvious you're paying some heed to it, but then again, you're a better player than me, so maybe...
sometimes it's more like I've waiting listed it, and then I've like sometimes when you're playing, you feel like you're at your capacity in terms of table count. So it might be sometimes that I don't like the table, or it might just be like, I just don't want another table right now, because it's just...
All right,
sometimes I'm in the mood for another table and I can do sitting. Sometimes I might, maybe I just won't have that table, or I've forgotten to sort of join that waiting list. So it might be some of that, and but I very rarely play. So some of I'm not not experienced with the cash scene. So
no, I think you're a good player. I really do.
No, I feel like I'm good. I feel like I'm just not experienced with like the etiquette, so to speak, of like what with cash etiquette around like sitting at tables and joining waiting lists and sitting with fish. So like there might be some things where I'm like, oh, that's not good practice or not good etiquette to do that. It's just mainly because I've just got no experience playing cash. So a lot of it's just like, I fancy a bit of a punt after my tournament schedule. Tournaments are shit in the early hours, but cash games are good. And I fancy playing poker still, and I fancy playing a couple more hours yet. Get on the cash tables.
I would say where you're clearly a better study player than me. You understand poker better than me. I'd say like your edge against like the likes of the better rigs you've mentioned earlier, like you're losing less to them than I am. And maybe you're even doing better against some of them. I haven't played enough with you to know exactly where you fit, but you certainly, you're not as disadvantaged as I am. But I would probably say that you're not as like experienced at just fucking taking the fish off quickly and getting them out of the
Yeah,
fucking way, because that's all it is. It's
yeah.
they're basically like, it's not you against the other eggs and it's you against the site. You know that you're at a table and there's say me, you, Dan, Cocoa Pops, and 2 fish, and those 2 fish between them have 140 bigs. I wouldn't sit that table. I'd be like, these fish aren't enough, because Sky are probably raking 100 bigs, 100 out of that game. So you've got like maybe an hour and a half for those fish to bust them before, like, no one's making money at that table anymore theoretically against the rake. Now they're always going to go broke before that. That fish aren't going to last at a table with 4 good regs that long. But there isn't that much edge there. There's 140 bigs to go around between 4 good players and the rake. So there's how much money is there in there? Not a lot. So I just tend to fuck off. If it's me and 3 regs and 2 fish, unless the fish are deep stacked and I'm deep with them, or unless they are like epic whales and I've got the best seat, I just tend not to bother, because I think once there's 3 regs and me, then rate becomes like a really big factor. I'm winning off the fish, but I'm probably losing to the regs I'm in position on, who are positioned on me, because that's just how poker works. You know, if I've got position on you at a ring table, I'm just going to beat you up a little bit, and vice versa. It's just how it fucking works. So it needs to be a really special table dynamic for me to stay sitting with just 2 fish. If there isn't 2 fish, I just think it's not worth me having that extra table. Taking away from my it's taking away from a few things. Taking away from my concentration at other tables. It's starting to annoy me, because like the regs behind me are making that difficult for me, which triggers my mental game a little bit, like it does for all of us. And I could just close that table, open up another one, and just sit at an empty table, and maybe a fish doesn't sit for 10 minutes, but that's probably 10 minutes better spent in the long term, because then I get that fish to myself for a few minutes, than it is spending those 10 minutes like having you, Dan, and fucking Cocoa Pops having position on me, not letting me ISO the fish as often as I want to. So again, I think I'm just better at seeing the bigger picture than the shit regs. Not the good regs, not at all. But from like a lot of the mediocre fucking, 20 VPIP, 5% 3-bet regs. And there's a plethora of them. Obviously, we don't know the numbers, but we're all experienced enough to know that most of these guys aren't 3-betting a lot, and they're playing pretty tight, They're just bog standard. What would have been classed as old-fashioned tags, now they're just nits. Like I am. Yeah. So again, I'm not dismissing them because I'm a fucking nit. I'm a bigger nit than some of them are. Some of them even, for sure. I just think I have a better all-round idea of like how to make the money the easiest way than a lot of those guys do. And that Juice is similar. You'll never see Juice Mass tabling, but you'll always see him at good tables, unless it's 3 a.m. and he's just wanting to dick around with regs and fuck around with them because he's an eccentric millionaire and he can afford to just be a pain in the... I think Juice sometimes likes just being a pain in the ass to people, whereas I haven't got that in me. I'd just rather...
Sometimes it's nice to sit... Sometimes I'll sit on a cast table with a couple of people I know well, and even though it's a terrible table, just because poker's not my main source of income, and sometimes it's like, it's a bit of fun to sit with, and you do it sometimes as well. We have a bit of a laugh when we sit on a shit table between a couple of friends. I did it more
when I didn't need to win at poker. When I was doing the apps and I was like making like decent money, I didn't need to win, so I'd do anything. I'd fucking play tournaments. I'd no right play, and I'd do the fucking lot. Now, like, don't need to win, because I mean, if I didn't earn any money from poker for 6 months, we'd still be able to pay the bills and stuff. But because I just need to have a better attitude now than I did. When I was doing the apps, I was like a massive recreational player. The only reason I played was to spam them, and otherwise I was just literally playing for my own amusement. Now it's not. Now it's like I've got to enjoy it, because if I don't enjoy it, I won't do it. But at the same time, I've got to be like, well, you can't be fucking around 5-bet jamming fucking 10-7 suited against Duesenberg anymore just because it's funny. When I was doing the apps, if I spunked off 60 quid in 10 minutes just arsing around, I literally couldn't care less. Now it'd be like, fuck me, Reg, that's a day and a half grinding. You just fucking, theoretically a day and a half grinding, you just fucking pissed away there. Because I try and aim to like earn 40 quid a day. If I'm getting 40 quid a day, 7 days a week, and then the other money I get from the other work, happy days, I've got the life of Riley. But if you're like getting involved in cash games with all you fucking Discord whoppers, and we're all having massive pissing contests with each other, then I can undo 2 or 3 days work in next to no time, and then it just takes me a lot of time to make that back. So I don't do it as much now as I did, but yeah, there's still a bit of fun. I wouldn't mind the occasional 4-L thing. I would just to throw fucking 20 quid at it, but I don't want it. You won't be catching me fucking round. If I'm at a 20-L table with you lot, I'm probably the only one who's trying, I would imagine.
Yeah. I try, but I know what you mean. It's like I'm probably making more money sat somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely.
or like maybe not making money. It's like because the rake's eating you up. It's like, but like I guess do you not think when you see a couple of people from Discord who don't play cash, do you think well, like you see a lot of MTT regs, like maybe even myself, do you just think well they might like you don't mind that table? Let's say you've got the likes of me and I don't know, you know the like your MTT regs. You know when you see them sat at cash tables, you think, well, I don't mind them being there because there'll be an experience with cash, or do you sort of think, well, the good regs are MTTs, so they're likely to be reasonable at cash?
Yeah, I mean,
What
I'd
thought
like.
process?
There's lots of MTT regs who I'd love to come and like play at my cash tables, if
Yeah,
they were playing cash the same way they play MTTs. But they're playing
right.
MTTs the way they play them because they're well studied to
Yeah,
good, and they know that's the way to play them. So when that
yeah,
fucking salty old bastards like me and Juicenberg are there fucking slagging off like the Crystal Palace or Stay or Go,
yeah,
all or Arrogant, all these like what on the face of it to me look like really fucking spewy bad aggro regs, but they're doing exactly
yeah,
the right thing for bounty hunters. So it looks shit to
yeah,
me, but it only looks shit to me because I'm fucking too thick to understand it. I don't understand it. I haven't studied enough to understand it. Now, if they came and played at cash tables the way they play tournaments, like calling fucking 18 big blind three bets with fucking, like Queen fucking 10 suited and stuff, I'd fucking love it. Come on, bring it on, come on all day. But they won't play like that because they're too smart, they're too clever. So
yeah. They'll
they wouldn't
adjust
play the
to
same way.
play
Yeah,
cash well.
of
Yeah,
course they would, So it's very different. If they were going to come and do exactly what they did at tournaments, yeah, come on, I'll play you all day. But they wouldn't because they're clever enough to learn how to play MTTs correctly. And if they're going to do that, they're not just going to come and be a moron at a cash table.
yeah. So often you're thinking, well, they're the people you want to avoid and not sit with anyway because they're adjusting well and they're going to be good anyway. So I guess you're going to have some MTT regs who are like weaker regs who just come on the cash tables and just punt and
Oh yeah, there's some.
we want to sit with them. So
There's definitely some. Um, and they do make life interesting. They make it because they are. If a bad MTT regular comes to your table, the one thing they're going to do is be too aggressive and they're going to be too sticky. So if they bring their like MTT leaks to a cash table, but do I think CPFC it's over for you, stay or go? A lot of the MTT rigs that I look at and think, fuck me, you're just a punter. They're not just punters. That's just me not understanding their game format. Of course they are. Fucking damn straight they would. And they've been,
no way they would.
and they'd probably bin me because I'd have this image of them in my head that just wasn't the strategy they were using. So no, yeah, there's some tournament regs I like to see coming. What the F? Big Nige, Colin 11. There's a few MTT regs that I like to see at my tables, but none of the fucking good ones. None of the ones that win a lot. And when I'm like trolling MTT regs saying this shit at poker, I'm not. It literally is just me trying to look for a reaction. Juice's on his stream as well. It's just me looking for a reaction. I know these guys are really fucking good. It's just more fun to pretend you think the shit,
Yeah.
But no, of course they're fucking good. You don't have graphs like they have and be shit. You just don't.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah, I'm gonna have to shoot in a couple of minutes.
All right, mate.
Anyway,
Yeah, well, I'm gonna. Well, my wife's just gone out, so
no,
Dodge
sure.
go to the fucking in-laws, which is absolutely fucking fantastic. So yeah, I'm gonna start this video rendering, have a nap, and hopefully get it up before 1:00 because I've given him a little shout out at the start. So thank you very much for joining me, mate. I really do appreciate that. It's 2 hours 22 minutes have flown by.
Too long because I know I can go on a bit. But
no, honestly, mate, it's been a pleasure. But here's the thing: I don't give a fuck if people don't enjoy it because I've enjoyed it, and it's just my hobby. I don't make a penny out of YouTube. I used to make money out of it when I was flogging coaching. I used to make money out of it when I was flogging rate back on apps. Now I don't make a penny from YouTube. I just do it because I enjoy doing it. I control a few people here and there. I can get a few salty reactions from people who want it from, and then I just get to chat with people like yourself and other people who want to talk poker about, and I just enjoy it. If this only got fucking 12 views and 10 thumbs down, I wouldn't give a fuck because I spent 2 hours 23 minutes chatting to someone who I like chatting to about poker. So I'm already in. I've already won. So who gives a fuck?
Yeah, same for me. That's how I look at it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you take care, mate.
Appreciate it.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
And while you're here, I'd say be able to PM you. If you're selling any action tonight, if you wanted to play that big weekend bounty hunter and you wanted to sell 25%, you've got an interesting party here. So if you play it,
Yeah,
just
I'll
book
give
me
you a
for it.
shout.
Yeah. If you
I
message
will
me
do, yeah.
and I'm napping and you don't respond, just take it as read. Book me for 25%,
Yeah,
but
I
only
will
for
do,
one
yeah.
bullet.
Yeah,
Because I don't want to be going fucking
I'm weighing
broke.
up whether I'm going to play it or not, but I will do if I'm playing
Well,
it.
I'll have
Yeah, cheers,
25%
mate.
of your first bullet, Chief. All right,
Yeah,
magic.
cheers,
Take
mate.
care, mate.
Cheers.
Ta-da.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
So that was Swogg from Sky Poker. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation between us. We're both quite wordy. It's gone on possibly longer than expected. Fuck knows how long it would have gone on for if there was multiple people in the talking ground. Thankfully, it was just Swog. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Leave comments, hit the thumbs up, etc. Subscribe if you haven't. And yeah, I guess no. But yeah, if you started watching this at 6 o'clock and it's now just 8:30, don't forget, head over, give Waller a follow. Go and hit the link beneath the video and go and say hi from this channel. But yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. I'll be back probably on Monday with a video, but I don't know if I'm a partner or not. I can't keep asking people to join me. Hopefully I will. If I don't, it'll just be me. But take care, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, all that shit. Bye-bye for now.